The quickest, the fastest, the best in the world.
Magnus Carlsen.
Dominant, absolutely dominant.
Chess at blazing speeds.
Get popcorn ready.
Moves without thinking.
Rook A8, Rook A8!
Tactics without blinking.
Oh, Knight of 64.
What in the world just happened?
Oh my God, he lost some time.
The Speed Chess Championship is the elite chess event of the year. For 9 years, the world's strongest blitz players have matched wits over the 64 squares.
How does he do this?
This year, the world's best face-off.
Like E7, he's blundering everything.
Fork, fork, fork.
You're watching the SCC on Chess.com, and it starts now.
This is what they're fighting for, a ticket to the city of lights, history, and champions. The 10th Speed Chess Championship Grand Finals in February will be played live in person in London. And no one does SCC quite like Hikaru Nakamura. He is the highest rated bullet and blitz player on Chess.com. He is the 5-time champion, and today he starts his SCC 2025 campaign against the quietly dangerous, the 2013 World Blitz champion Liem. The chase is on and London will decide the champion. I'm Tanya Sachdev and alongside me today, as always, the inimitable Grandmaster Aman Hamilton. Aman, from Paris, we go to London for this year's final. How cool is it? How transformative chess has become from being a library room sport to becoming an e-sport power game.
Amazing. Tanya, it's great to have you back, my first returning co-commentator. So thank you for coming back for the commentary. I'm excited for this one because it's Hikaru and Magnus that have won the Speed Chess Championship every single year. So obviously, watching that journey start is super exciting. And with the finals being in London, it was in Paris. I mean, I just hope this becomes the norm, Tanya. Where are we going after this?
I think it's already become the norm. Just every single iconic city on the planet, get chess there. It's awesome to see all of that happen. And you said it, right? In Paris, it was actually the first finals among which Hikaru did not make it to. He was knocked out in the semifinals by Alireza Firouzja. So I think he returns this year with that fire, with that hunger to once again prove his SCC domination. And it is his start. It's going to be a big, big one. And before we deep dive into the match, into the stats, let's hit the play button on our format explainer.
The Speed Chess Championships feature the most exciting format in online chess. 3 different time controls test competitors' skills across Blitz and Bullet. First is the 5-minute Blitz. Players battle for 75 minutes in the strategic and accurate time control. Next are 50 minutes of 3-minute Blitz, the sweet spot. It's slow enough that there is some time to think, but fast enough that intuition and speed are crucial.
Oh! And he's going to eliminate the B pawn and win.
Finally, 25 minutes of Bullet decide it all. Players are not just battling against their opponent and the board, but also the clock.
This is crazy. Hans was winning, and if you spotted it, a double attack, that would have clinched it.
It's a race against time to score points before time runs out. In all time controls, games have 1 second of increment. Once time trouble sets in, the players may be able to avoid flagging, but they will be locked into a scramble for the rest of the game. Fast, furious, tilting, and thrilling, since 2016, the Speed Chess Championship format has been the standard. Who is the king of online speed chess?
A format that we've all come to love and be entertained by. It's going to be awesome. And Aman, I have to ask you, we've got this 3-segment accumulative points at the end of it. Starts with 5 minutes, moves on to 3, and then finally the bullet portion. When you're up against a guy like Hikaru Nakamura, where is Liem going to find his chance? Which segment will be critical this time?
Well, Tanya, I'm glad that you mentioned that Liem is actually a former World Blitz champion in 2013. People need a reminder, I think, about that, because obviously, when you think about how do you do an upset, like how does it happen? It's probably bullet. People think, oh yeah, let me get to the bullet portion and then anything can happen. It's actually the opposite when it comes to Hikaru Nakamura. You get to the bullet and that might be a death sentence. So I think he actually needs to get it done probably in the longer time control. So in the 5-minute, in the 3-minute, Tanya, I think for a former World Blitz champion, you actually need to perform there because Hikaru is such a bullet specialist. That's actually one of his biggest advantages over his opponents and his competitors in the SCC.
Exactly. I think it's so critical for Liem to make sure that he hangs on with Hikaru, especially at the start, because Hikaru has this thing where he builds on the momentum. He wants to pull away in that 5+1 section. I think if Liem's able to keep that in control, then we've got a match in our hands, because in that three-minute game, maybe Liem will find his chances. For Hikaru, bullet is his territory. He's the king of the clock. So counting on that is a bad idea. And of course, Liem perhaps knows that better than anyone, that today it is a big, big matchup for him. Now the SCC, it's become the legacy blockbuster event of Chess.com. And we spoke about how Hikaru's won it 5 times. He's made it to 8 grand finals. But there's one guy, almost equally decorated as him. He won it twice, 2 times in a row, including the awesome finals in Paris, Magnus Carlsen. And what are we going to get on hand in this year's SCC? Well, today, a big one. Hikaru starts his campaign, but let's do a rewind and let's see how it all started and where we are.
Oh my God.
No, but Hikaru, he has 15 more seconds. He needs to bleed.
Oh my goodness,
Rook A2.
Now Magnus Carlsen is the reigning Grandmaster Blitz Battle champion.
Yep.
It all came down to one man, Magnus Carlsen, who won Eric.
The game's over. They just drew, so should be joined with them anything.
They draw by mutual agreement.
Oh, look at this stalemate trick with 95.
96.
Another year where Hikaru Nakamura takes down.
And Hikaru Nakamura, he wins the Speed Chess Championship. Hikaru recognizes it. He wins the Speed Chess Championship. Magnus gives a little bit clap for Hikaru Nakamura. Oh my gosh, Aman. Hikaru had its first mate, and it's a draw by agreement.
Magnus has won.
And he's won.
SCC is over. Magnus Carlsen claims the SCC title for the second year in a row.
And that is the big question. Who will be next? Just two faces in the Hall of Fame, the champions of SCC so far. 9 editions played, starting with Magnus winning 2 back-to-back in 2016 and 17, and then 3 in a row by Hikaru Nakamura. But you know what? These two, the amount of times they won a month, one graphic is not enough. Let's turn it around, because coming closer to where we are, we had Hikaru do another 2 in a row before Magnus taking it in 23 and 24. Hikaru starting today, Aman, how motivated is he to find himself in London, to have that clash and make it to the finals for the 9th time?
Honestly, Tanya, I think he's very motivated. I mean, we know that there's 2 players that really always seem to get it done, that always seem to win the event. But Hikaru was notably excluded from basically the only finals in the history of the event. In 2024, it was Magnus versus Firouzja. And that's a place where Hikaru expects himself to be. Tanya, when he signs up to play the SCC every year, that's where he expects to be, first place or second place. And so I think when the expectations are that high, yeah, you come back and you absolutely want to find yourself there again. So I actually think he's coming into this SCC with a bit of a chip on his shoulder. He definitely wants to be back there, Tanya.
And also really fascinating to see how in that graphic, whenever we've had a Magnus versus Hikaru final, how close the matches have been. In 22, Hikaru winning 14.5 to 13.5. In 23, Magnus beating Hikaru with a 1-point margin. But anybody else in that arena, you know, the Magnus Alireza match, it just wasn't as close. So perhaps so far, it sort of made sense why we've had these two faces. Aman, what are the chances we have an absolutely new winner in 2025?
Well, the chances are obviously low. You're talking about Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura here. However, I do think that Alireza Firouzja is really nipping on their heels. He's right there. He had his trip to the finals in last year. Now, the match wasn't super close when you think about those battles between Hikaru and Magnus, but Tanya, it's all about finding that next talent, right? The young player that's going to astonish us. However, at the moment, call it like it is. We have 2 players dominating, and for good reason.
One of them, Magnus, he cruised and dominated his match going into the quarterfinals. Hikaru, how's it going to be for him today? Well, he's facing Liem, and yes, he's the underdog, but you can't write him off. Liem isn't going to make this easy for Hikaru. Let's take a look at their head-to-head. Aman, what stands out to you? Are you expecting a lopsided match? You've been commentating on the SCC from the very first. You've seen it all. You've seen the favorites make it through without problems. You've seen the overtime action. You've seen upsets. What are you expecting today?
Well, I've also seen the prediction models and how they weigh favorites here. I've seen it 94, 96, 98%. I wouldn't be surprised to see this one up there as well, Tanya, because let's face it, Hikaru Nakamura in round number 1 is going to be a massive favorite, and 99%, a whopping 99 for Hikaru. I mean, Tanya, are you shocked by this? Because I'm just going to go out and say that I'm not. I really do think that this is a pretty fair assessment.
Wow, that's a hot take. It wouldn't be a hot take to call Hikaru a favorite in this match, but 99% to 1. I mean, that pretty much means that our model cannot imagine pretty much a single simulation where Liem takes this match. Look at the scoreline it's giving in each of the segments as well. A 1.5 score to Liem. I do think Hikaru massively favorite, but I would put this somewhere 80-20. It's still a match that's won by playing games. Algorithms, engines do not decide it. If that was the case, we could have just wrapped up the show already and handed it over to Hikaru Nakamura. But human elements, flaws and brilliancies of these players, nerves. For Liem, I think he has to play his absolute A game, his absolute best. He has to play it fast. And I think he has to hope that Hikaru's having that rare off day and maybe pray for a little bit of magic.
Yeah, the thing about Hikaru Nakamura's off day is he might beat you by a margin of 10 on his off day. Sometimes his off day is not good enough. I really wonder how Liem is going to perform here. I hope that he starts the blitz well, because as we've been talking about, that's the segment I think that he needs to focus on. It's just really tough to imagine a victory knowing that Hikaru has that bullet in his back pocket. Now, Liem is certainly no slouch, but he's definitely, compared to some of these first round matchups and some of the lopsided nature, I don't think he has the online experience that maybe Min Lei had or maybe Jospim had. Even though they went on to lose their matches, they really showed up in the bullet. That's something that I'm not sure that Liem has in his arsenal. So it means that the pressure on him to perform in blitz, Tanya, and to start well is very high.
Yeah, both these players super strong and fast at time formats, but from different arenas, like you say, right? For Hikaru, it's breakfast, lunch, and dinner to be playing blitz and bullet online. But for Liem, it's been more over the board, and it's go time as we begin our 5+1 with the first game, and it's the Trumpowski.
Yeah, we're starting off with, I mean, Hikaru is kind of in this phase right now where he's not always playing the absolute top moves, but he is really, really good at finding the sidelines and executing them super well when it comes to blitz and bullet formats. And it just shows he's the type of player that just wants to get a position. We've seen him open with pawn to b3 on move number 1, Tanya. So not surprised to see something here that will likely be swapped as the match goes on. I don't think he'll play this every single time.
I think today is going to be an absolute treat when it comes to openings. We're going to see all kinds of them, and especially by Hikaru. His repertoire with blitz, bullet is just so incredibly varied. He can start with principled moves like d4, switch them up, or even flank openings. The amount of times you've seen him play the reti or push the b pawn early on, like you said, sometimes on move 1. Even with the black pieces, we might see him employ solid stuff like Queen's Gambit decline, but then also rely on King's Gambit on King's Indian defense. And the modern and the perk setups, just double flank-cutting his bishop. I think it's going to be a lot of fun opening-wise. But Liem, one of his big assets are also his deep opening preparation. And I think he's doing pretty well so far, Aman.
Yeah, one of the things about this position is, black wants to play knight c6 and b4. So white usually slides the rook to c1. Now, my understanding of this position is it can actually be beneficial for white to capture on b8. And I think that's why the computer is not liking this position as much. So I actually think that Hikaru's game right now is objectively not good. And I also think he probably knows it. But, this is speed chess. You can play pretty much anything. Credit to Liem. I think he's executing, Tanya, an absolutely beautiful plan here of knight to a4. And that required a capture. That b pawn is going to be weak. An idea like rook a6, b6 in the future.
And notice how the bishop on g6 is just beautifully placed to stop any defenders from getting to that b pawn. So give him 2 moves and suddenly big pressure. You can see it on Hikaru as well. He doesn't like what he's gotten. He misses that accurate h4. It was time for him to go on the counter offense. Meanwhile, Liem not skipping a beat. He's going for your idea. Rook b5. And if you have to play rook a2 to defend that b2 pawn, that's not good news.
Yeah, it's been a very bad opening for Hikaru. And I do think that maybe capturing that knight on b8 would have slowed down a lot of this progress. There's a lot of kingside expansion to be had by Hikaru. And to be honest, yeah, h4, h6 makes sense here. It is a bad position. Rook a8, rook a6, rook b6 as well.
Wow. So the other rook will join the party, and then you've got to find ways to defend it. Perhaps we'll see Hikaru use his king to defend those positions, trying to march it to c1 to keep b2 protected. It looks like Aman Hikaru's playing from a hotel room in one of his travels. We can barely see half of his camera. The position does look half bad for white, but Hikaru going for the offense on the other side. Liem looking calm and composed.
Yeah, and I think because we just had the match yesterday with Wesley So, and he was saying that the Hikaru is now back in St. Louis. He was playing some tournaments actually in Canada, but I believe that that's where he is currently, Tanya, and so that would make perfect sense. Yeah, fitting this match into his schedule, and honestly, he can't be that happy playing this position in game number 1. But like I said, Hikaru, a phenomenal defender, very resourceful. Even though the position looks bad, we also have to think, where's the progress that can be made for Liem? I said rook a8, rook a6, rook b6, but Hikaru has already preempted that with rook h2, now maybe bringing the king to c1. Position's bad, but is it lost?
And the thing is, getting a good position against Hikaru is not even half the job done, right? His never say die defense attitude, how many times you've seen him turn it around in those few moments. He's the king of flagging from worse positions. He's also managed to equalize the time so far. He's going for those central breaks, now blocking the bishop out. I think one can ignore that question mark, because from a human perspective, this is what you want to play. You want to break that central pawn formation that black has, get your own counterplay, create some weaknesses, and Hikaru almost looks like he's going on the counter offense. Aman, if we did not have the eval bar saying that Liem's still better, I'd almost feel that Hikaru's made a lot of progress.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is the rook on a2 is not part of the game, so it's really difficult to ever imagine a position unless there's a significant blunder where white ends up better. You know, it's just not possible with that rook on a2, and there's no future for the rook to rejoin. I was thinking knight f1, knight e3, knight c2, knight b4, but I mean, if I'm trying to find a 4-move long, knight maneuver just to free the rook, you can tell the position is really in Lekwang's favor at the moment.
That's the problem child, the problem piece, the rook on a2. You put that on the e line suddenly, and we're talking about a completely different game. The bishop on h7, the unchallenged light squared bishop is an absolute monster, making it impossible for white to coordinate pieces. And here he's going for a plan of his own, also targeting that f3 pawn if the knight comes to g5.
Yeah, and that blue arrow, a reminder to the people watching, that move means that white needs to spot this move in order to not have a significantly worse position. So this is the best move in the position according to the engine. Knight to g6, the fork, and just also blocking that bishop on h7. We know how crucial it is to do that because, Tanya, you can play king c2, rook a1, rook e1 afterwards. So I think this is a huge achievement.
We just said put that rook on e1. We're talking about a completely different game, and Hikaru is making it happen. He does block that bishop on h7. It might come at the cost of a pawn, taking and then dropping that knight to the square the rook just vacated, knight to h8, does win a pawn. Whoa, a sacrifice.
Wow, what? Yeah, I mean, rook takes e7. Now, I have to say, I didn't even consider it because I just optically looked at the knight on h7 and said, well, no, that can't be good. The knight is basically trapped in there. But I guess Hikaru is saying that, I mean, the position was so tough, he'd rather play this. Tanya, do you understand what's going on here?
I think it's exactly what you said. He wanted some relief in the position. Also, black will have to spend a few moves getting to that knight on h7. Meanwhile, I think Hikaru aims at getting that rook from a2 into the game. It's sacrifice after sacrifice. He does take on f6. What's the pawn count? He's got 2 extra pawns as well. So materially still in the balance.
Yeah, and I can definitely see this position working. Remember, the rook is offside, but so is the rook on b5, meaning it's really only doing one thing. Black is still much better here, but if you play a move like f4, bring the king up, bishop e5, also knight f3 coming, Tanya, those pawns can actually just win the game on their own.
This is not what the bar suggests to be. Gives an advantage to black, but I think very difficult to play. Also knowing that, you were in complete control and white was struggling to even find moves. And suddenly you have to be a little precise, not to allow white the activity. I think it's a tough spot for Liem to handle right now. He's trying to get his king to e6. Is it time that Hikaru starts pushing the pawns? f4, g5, plant that bishop on e5.
Yeah, I think the move king d7 also prepares the rook to maybe slide over to the e-file. So Hikaru has to be careful that he doesn't allow both rooks to show up on the e-file and start invading before his rook can can join on e1. So it's quite a delicate position. He's spending some time here. Liem, we have to say, has managed the clock very, very well, kept up on the clock, on the position. A very, very good first game showing to start things off.
100%. He's got a big advantage on the clock, on the board as well. Hikaru attacks the rook, gives a check. Liem does. The other rook headed to that file. Will Hikaru be in time to go f4, bishop e5 to block the e line and stop the rooks from infiltrating?
Well, yeah, the thing with f4 is it accomplishes bishop e5, but it does allow knight d6, knight e4. We see a full invasion trapping the white rook, but apparently knight e4, the top engine move missed by Hikaru. Oh, this is looking bad, Tanya.
Now the rooks have entered. Hikaru's relying all his hopes on that h6 pawn and a big blunder. What happened there?
What was that?
Hikaru was winning for one move. He was winning for one move.
What was rook g2? I have no... What just occurred there? I guess he meant rook g1 and then king f4, knight d8. I mean, I don't even know what to say about that. He resigned because the knight was coming to e6 and there would have been a checkmate idea there. I'm shocked by the resignation. I'm shocked by the absolutely hanging rook that neither player on the webcam seemed to react to. What did we just look at, Tanya?
He pre-moved. Hikaru pre-moved king to f4, preempting rook g1 check. And Liem, I don't know what he was thinking with rook g2. It's unbelievable. We need like a slow action replay of that moment. That just happened too quick. But look at Hikaru. He's not phased at all. He's completely unbothered by it. And this is one of his biggest skill set, Aman. His ability to reset instantly. He doesn't go on tilt. He just gets ready for the next one.
He definitely does not go on tilt. I will say he's playing an opening that is a true Hikaru special. The move h3 by Liem is played to prevent bishop h3. I can't tell you how many grandmasters and people rated well over 3,000 on Chess.com have castled, and after bishop h3, h5, h4 have literally just gotten checkmated, Tanya. So it seems like a gimmick or this joke online system that Hikaru plays, but it works so well that you have to respect it.
Absolutely. I mean, I want to say almost don't try this at home, but Hikaru's shown that he manages to do it every time when he does employ it, and now he's also looking at expansion. On the other side, he's controlled the b5 square, often ideas of rook b8 and advancing that b pawn. And this is what he does, right? He plays these offbeat openings when he's on the behind, when he's trailing in the match. He's trying to avoid all those mainline theories where he knows Liem will know exactly what he wants. He wants a game. He goes immediately for the b5 idea. No more preparation required.
Yeah, none needed. You can play rook b8, but usually you play that move if you have to support b5. Because the reality is, Tanya, after the pawns exchange, you want that rook on the a file. Now, if you can skip rook b8, I think that's just in Hikaru's favor. It looks like he's just got a good version of every opening. This is like a Benoni structure. He doesn't even have to sack the pawn like a Benko gambit. And Liem just has the bishop in front of the pawns here. A bit of a strange situation. Nothing wrong with the position, but I think this is really trending in Hikaru's favor.
He's got the rook beautifully placed on the open A line now, already putting pressure on that A2 pawn. The knight beautifully defends the C5 pawn. And although white also has a very healthy position, we can already see an imbalanced middle game. And I think that's exactly what Hikaru was aiming for in this game too.
Yeah, G4, a little bit of an odd move there. I do understand it. You want to take control of some squares, knight h5, bishop f5, and Hikaru has this look that he's considering, do I play h5? I mean, how do I open the position here? Do I move the knight and play for f5? At this point, I'd be considering any and all options, not to mention pawn takes on b4. Although it kind of walks into this pressure on the c file, it also loosens up the a pawn. Queen b8 indicates pawn takes on b4 is an idea now, but Hikaru knows that he has a pretty good position here, I think.
But he keeps shaking his head. He's not happy about something. Did he just miss that the c5 pawn was hanging? What happened there? Was that a bit of a blind spot as he kind of just calms himself down? It almost felt like pawn takes pawn was a surprise for Hikaru.
Yeah, I'm wondering if pawn c6, the engine's top move here, was a surprise because it feels like Hikaru was expecting that b4 would work a little bit differently and maybe he could take on a2 or recapture on c5. He missed something there. We could just tell by the reaction, but the move g5, I think he's feeling good again. The knight is really secure on h5. a2 pawn is hanging, and white, I was going to say, before that move, Tanya, was still not castled 20 moves into the game.
This is looking really nice for black in this position. Yes, you can pick up that knight with your bishop, but you relinquish the bishop pair advantage for the rest of the game. We've got enough open diagonals. He hits the queen, a2 still under attack. The one source of counterplay for white here, for Liem, is that c5 is hanging, and the knight could take it instantly, putting pressure on the bishop.
Yeah, that pawn is absolutely gone. Queen h4, though, reminds you it's not so easy to take. Not only does a knight need to remain on e4, right, to guard the g pawn, but also the h3 pawn as well is under attack. So queen h4 nestles itself on just a beautiful square. Meanwhile, the a2 pawn is also hanging. So a good way to deal with things, instead of defending the c pawn, attacking two more.
Yeah, Hikaru's going on the offense. It might be time for white. I was going to suggest queen f3 to defend h3, but he instead sets up a discovered attack, and there's a big move. Did Hikaru miss knight to d6? The knight on b7 hangs. The queen on h4 is hanging. Queen takes pawn. Knight takes knight. And bishop takes pawn. You've got queen f3 controlling everything.
Yeah, the queen on h4 was a great square. I mean, it really looked like it couldn't have been better. I have to give credit to rook c4, the move that set this all up. You just don't expect this. Hikaru shuffled the king to the side, avoiding knight f6, losing the queen. But knight d6, I mean, loses the knight. You're saving the material here. This is just a much better position. I almost want to say winning, but not quite. I think we're still in complications here, Tanya, but an incredible advantage here for Liem.
Hikaru's playing for tricks now. The position looks almost busted. You're down an entire piece for just one pawn, and c5 is incredibly weak as well. It almost looks like there's no attack. There's a rook on f1 hanging, but that's a one-move threat, Aman. Is Liem about to win his second game in a row?
That would truly be something. I mean, we talked about the best place that Liem needed to perform. It was the 5-minute portion, the 3-minute portion after that. I thought that there was maybe a little bit of unnecessary counterplay with this one. Bishop c3, rook takes a2. I didn't like rook e1. I almost felt like you should have just given up the material there, Tanya.
I think the logic that perhaps tempted him to go rook e1 is he wants to give it up for the dark squared bishop to create weaknesses around the black king. But like you said, it just invites this counterplay with a move like rook takes pawn coming in with the tempo. But now I think Hikaru's also trying to play on Liem's clock, stopping
and this
any
allows
ideas of
rook
a1,
which yeah, exactly. We both pretty much saw it at the exact same time, and I thought, well, technically rook a1 is winning material, but I think Liem is super happy to sacrifice there.
And now Hikaru has to retreat with the other knight. He has to control the a1 square. And look at the coolness with which, Hikaru in some ways just set up that idea. But Liem, he has to be equally calm and find knight b3, a retreating defensive move, but it needs to be played. Rook a1 is a massive threat on the board.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think this, and seeing how Liem handles this position, Tanya, is, I know we're early, but I think it's a really big deal for this entire matchup because he has a better position, a winning position, but does he have the composure down 2 minutes, more than 2 minutes on the clock to find these top moves and secure this advantage?
And look at Hikaru. He doesn't even take a breath with rook a1. He doesn't stop. He had something better, but he's playing the position as much as he's playing the clock. He knows it's really important to keep pressure on those 20 seconds, remaining seconds that Liem has for his chances. Sacrifices the queen. And what a crazy material count. That's a bunch of pieces for the queen. Rook and 2 knights.
Yeah, rook, 2 knights, and I guess not even a pawn for the queen. So what a crazy imbalance. Now, if we're just speaking about the imbalance here, the honest truth is that white is better and should be winning. This is way too much for the queen, but time is going to be a big factor here, and Hikaru is so good at using your low time against you.
It's part of his biggest skill set, right? He does it every time. He puts pressure, but he's hating the position. He'll keep the fight going. He'll try to flag Liem, but that 1 second increment, it counts for something here. Also, the pieces are beautifully placed. Everything defends each other. He's now attacking the e7 pawn. If the d5 pawn becomes a passer, that's game over.
Yep, Hikaru is just setting up a few tricks here, as he should. This is how you have to play queen g5 if the rook captures on e7.
He's so tricky. You've got to be super alert. I'm so impressed with the composure Liem showing on camera. Playing on 10 seconds now.
Yeah, dropping the d-pawn, though. Things are getting a little bit murky. I'm concerned here. He's falling for a lot of tactics all of a sudden. Hikaru is so tricky.
And Hikaru's back in the game just like that. He's got a queen and pawn for 3 minor pieces. And usually the minor pieces, if they've got support, if they're able to build an attack against the king, they're stronger. But I think in this position, it's just very healthy. Look at that. Bishop takes pawn, queen d1 check would win the... What?
Yep.
He just won the knight?
Yeah, it was a forced tactic. He missed e5. He didn't bring the pieces back. Honestly, there might still be decent drawing chances. I say decent, but this should be a win for Hikaru. Let's see how he converts it. What did we talk about? Hikaru, so resourceful, so tricky, and down on time with only plus 1 second increment, not able to handle things was Liem. Amazing by Hikaru to win that game, Tanya.
That's a vintage Hikaru win, you know, when he's on the back foot. And for the majority of the game, completely busted a man. What a masterful performance by Liem in the opening, most of the middle game. And then having that upper hand, but Hikaru is so resourceful, setting up tricks. First, winning the queen, then winning that knight, then winning the rook, just setting up these ideas and traps. And that's what makes him so tricky. When you have seconds against Hikaru, you're not surviving it.
I know it's early, but Tanya, that is a really bad sign for this matchup for Liem. You have to be not losing those positions. Let's just say that. But I think you need to win that. Hikaru managed to win the d5 pawn, the d7 rook, the e2 knight, and then the g5 knight, all in succession. You can't drop that much material. That shows a lot of nerves from Liem early, dealing with that 1-2 seconds on the clock.
And that's the thing, right? He has to make sure that when he gets these chances, Liem does, he needs to maximize them because they're going to be far and few against a player like Hikaru. So to let go of that, he knows that was a big blip on the road. Hikaru makes a comeback. Now he starts with the white pieces and suddenly looking like Hikaru. He's suddenly looking a lot more confident. We see all of him.
Yeah, he definitely started head bobbing after that last victory because even for his standards, that was an incredible swindle. So yeah, of course, he approaches this game with a lot of confidence, and he's played king h1, pawn to f4. This is another typical Hikaru opening with knight c3 and knight e2. The bishop's opening starting with bishop c4, and the plan here is always to play king h1 and pawn to f4. That's why you do not develop the knight to f3 in this system to make way for this pawn.
And this is already starting to look very dangerous because once that pawn either moves forward, you're looking at a kingside pawn storm attack, or even trades on e5. Always watch out for rook takes knight, sacrifices the bishop from c1, joining from g5. Hikaru, though, slows down before he captures with the queen, so was tempted to go and recapture with the knight.
Yeah, I actually want to take a moment and just go back a couple moves here, Tanya, and put that idea on the board to illustrate. If bishop takes b3, for example, and queen d7, just want to show how important this sacrifice is. It's absolutely integral to this position. The bishop comes to h6, the knight comes to d5, the rook comes to f1. This would be overwhelming, and it's just purely down material here. The goal is not to win the rook back, but this would be a really, really powerful idea. Your rook takes f6. So just wanted to highlight how key that is in these positions and why, of course, Liem is not going to allow it.
And he had to fall back with the knight. Bishop g5 was threatened. You can't allow that eternal pin. Also really nice how Liem's placed his pieces. The bishop lands on d4, defending the king side, beautifully centralized. The knight reroutes itself, now threatening to take the bishop in b3. If white was to trade, bishop takes bishop, then I think Liem has the option to capture with the pawn, opening up the f line to challenge the rooks.
Yeah, and this is the advantage that Hikaru has in this position. He's got that open F file, so he does want to make use of it. If you go around taking, then it's going to correct itself. However, Black may want to kind of force this, play pawn to A4, try to get that in the position. So Hikaru is maybe gearing up for knight H5 and trying to say, look, if you spend all that time to make me capture, I got a slight initiative on the king side. But Tanya, I do think this is getting close to equal.
Very nicely handled. And I don't know if you noticed it, but Iman, there was like the strategic maneuver where Liem essentially swapped the knight and the bishop. The bishop landed on F6 from C5, the knight landed on C5 from F6. So understanding piece placement is so important.
That's right. Yeah, that's kind of funny. A musical chairs there for the black pieces, as now Hikaru's playing rook F3, rook F1. The great thing about Hikaru's position is that it's built for speed chess. It's so simple to play, and the engine loves it, right? He's got an advantage, and it feels like a position that I could already tell you the next couple moves that Hikaru's thinking about. You would be interested in trading these bishops as well. The dark squares around the king would become quite weak.
And always watch out for a knight sacrifice. Knight F5, knight H5, at the right moment is something that you need to keep in mind. That bishop on F6, so far defending everything on the king side. Rook F1 brings the rook to the active square. Has to fall back with the bishop. Are you tempted to trade the dark squared bishop? He keeps it alive. There were checkmating ideas. I think bishop G7, threats like knight H5 would have been devastating.
Yeah, agree. You have to be very careful, especially if you trade these bishops. All of a sudden, white can gain access to the C3 square and then be on that diagonal with knight H5, rook G3. There can actually be a checkmate coming out of nowhere here, Tanya.
He knows the bishop's a key defender. Also notice how he didn't take the B2 pawn, because that was a bit of a mouse trap. You take the cheese, C3 shuts down the mouse, kills it, and there would also be checkmate on the other side. So B2 not on pre. He falls back, but it's looking very precarious for the black king. Knight H5, pawn takes knight. It's still in the air. Either to F5 or to H5, rook G3 check. The king has nowhere to run.
Yeah, exactly. The move knight F5 also comes with maybe pawn takes, advancing the pawn. But I was going to highlight knight H5 is just hanging, right? It's completely hanging, but it's because of how important it is to control the G file. And if the knight goes to F6, Tanya, bishop takes, rook takes, those dark squares around the king are absolutely crying out for help. That looks like it would just win on the spot.
Now that's game over. You just cannot allow a move that forces the dark square bishop swap here. He has to take the knight, and for check, you've got bishop G4. That's the only resource that I see for Liem here. I don't believe he can allow the knight to live. It doesn't give a completely winning advantage to Hikaru. What's the best move here, Aman?
I was thinking F5. It's not pretty. I'll give you that. But this did not look very appetizing. Look, if pawn takes, there's maybe some idea like queen H4, although I have to say I still don't trust that after rook H3. It looked maybe like F5 was the smarter move, but knight H5 is just a really good move by Hikaru and so tough to react to, especially in speed chess.
And there's so many tempting options right now. You could rush with pawn takes bishop and say you have rook H3 for the check, but you could also put your queen on F4, threatening rook takes bishop idea. Your other rook could join the party from F4 at the right moment, but watch out for the back rank. And I think that's why Hikaru, he just slows down. He knows this is the moment. This is the other thing he does, right? He knows exactly when to calculate and when he needs to blitz out the moves.
Yep, what a skill. Queen H4, rook H3. I did not like this, and he's already calculated what I assume is just completely winning here. F7 is a threat. Rook G3 is a threat. Those two, I think that's enough. Like 2 threats, I don't see a good way to deal with things that keeps everything under control. And the rook on A4, Tanya, is just so offside.
And the move of the head bob is really the strongest. When that appears, you are done for in the game. And Hikaru, he knows he's about to get the second win. And Liem, you can see it on him. And so much of this comes down to what happened in the first game. And there we have it, Hikaru with his second back-to-back victory.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The momentum has really shifted. We've seen the head bob in full effect for the last couple of games. And no surprise that Hikaru was able to put that position away. It's his bread and butter. He always goes for that easy kingside attack, and so far he's played positions that really lend themselves to blitz.
And I know only time will tell this, but I wonder when the match is over, Aman, and we might end up looking back and thinking that it was game 2 of the 5+1 that decided the whole thing.
Yeah, it certainly set the tone because you're just not... Hikaru's going to make different decisions in that next game afterwards. So, the ripple effect, it's really impossible to say what would have happened. However, Hikaru is known for exactly what we saw there. He, against a player that he feels he's the favorite against, he's so tricky, and he's not just going to give you the win. He is one of the most resourceful defenders in the game, and that means that if he's in a losing position or worse position, Tanya, he still has great winning chances. Like, he doesn't quit.
He just doesn't. I don't think that word exists for him. And the number of times we've seen the turnarounds happen with Hikaru, and I think that's even something that Magnus has spoken about. Hikaru's resourcefulness as a defender is probably his biggest strength. When it comes to seconds, then you could be completely winning, but we'd still call Hikaru a favorite in those time scrambles. But the position that we have right now, I'm liking Liem's play here. More space with the white pieces. Your knight has this beautiful spot on e5 to jump to, controlling the center. So far, looking pretty good for Liem.
Yeah, this is a position I think almost both players don't mind. I know that white is supposed to be a little bit favored here, mainly because black doesn't have an active plan. Whether you take on c5 or play pawn to b5, black isn't really doing anything. It's not really too many targets. d4 can be hit, but as you said, there's always knight e5, and white is going for this plan of putting all the pawns on dark squares. There's no avenues for the black bishop. So while it's not an absolutely crushing advantage, white just has the space to do whatever you're interested in doing. h4, h5 is certainly the plan that I'm expecting.
And especially with that last move, right? Because rook h1 in the air as well, just to assist the queen once that h file does open up. Meanwhile, Hikaru eyeing the other flank for activity. He wants to try to get as many majors off the board. Rook a8 to follow.
Yeah, rook a7 is a great way to try to take over the a file. This is something that some players struggle with. You think that the two rooks are attacking each other. Okay, who's going to actually own this file? Rook a7, if you take, the queen will recapture, and then the rook slides over, and white loses control of the a file.
And now we have a knight versus bishop position where so instructive the way Liem, as you earlier mentioned, has put all his pawns restricting that bishop activity. Very often we might think it's better to put it on the light square so that they don't come under attack. But when you're playing for more, when you're playing for advantage, you actually do need to do this to make sure that the bishop doesn't become, a sniper in some of these positions. Right now, more space for white. I'm still picking Liem in this position.
Yeah, and it's a good reminder. There are a lot of principles and rules that we follow in chess, but they can be different or even opposite for the middle game versus the end game. In the end game, we might want our pawns, in this case, on light squares so they're safe. But in the mid game, if all the pawns were on light squares, that bishop would be having a field day. It would control every single square in the position. So because the queens are on the board, I do think it makes more sense. And that's why Liem has things organized like this. But it seems like Hikaru's plan is kind of reaching there first, right? He's going to take over that A file, and I don't think that Liem is doing that much other than queen b2 and maybe trying to challenge over there.
Trying to challenge the A line, or hidden ideas of maybe trying to get to the C pawn in certain positions if there was a trade on b6 at some moment. You could go queen b2, but I think Hikaru was also right to slide over his own queen to that A file. Instead, we've got Liem putting pressure on b6. If you go b5, do you go all in with knight b6? That question will remain a mystery. Pawn takes pawn, big decision now. I'd be tempted to recapture with the knight.
Yeah, the move pawn takes on c5 is going to be the standard recapture, and then you sort of have to convince yourself whether knight c5 is right. If you can sink that knight on b6, of course, f6, usually f4, and that was the computer's arrow saying pawn f4, Tanya, the only way to hold things together, but it makes perfect sense because if you take that, all of a sudden the d pawn is weak, and then pawn to e5 is happening.
It's very interesting. And meanwhile, Hikaru, he does double up on the A file, inviting that knight to jump forward. Does he want to trade queens or try to fight for activity? The problem piece is, of course, the dark squared bishop, which looks very lifeless right now. The white knight could also head for d6.
Yeah, the bishop looks lifeless for now. Pay attention, if in the future we see something like queen a2, then there's going to be an exchange. The pawns are probably going to exchange here, and the bishop will try to sort of get behind these pawns. The d pawn is the only weakness in the position, really, that you can actually attack. So I think Hikaru will be looking at that while trying to bring the king into the center of the board. So probably a queen trade here is not that bad. But if you look at white's king, so exposed here, Tanya, you kind of think that you might want to play for an attack as well.
And I think that's the dilemma that he's going through in his head. Does he keep the queens on the board? The answer is a yes. Attacking the d4 pawn right now, but it looks like our blue arrow says that that needs to be ignored and go for the counter offense with knight c8. If the rook moves anywhere else except the 7th rank, you've got knight e7 check picking up the c6 pawn.
Yeah, and it's been played. That's a tough evaluation to make, that knight e7, knight c6 is something you have time for, because I would be concerned about how many squares this rook is starting to access over here, both across on the 3rd rank, but also potentially the 2nd rank as well, pinning the queen to the king.
Big threat. So will Hikaru decide to go for the full counter offense, sacrificing, or will he keep things under control? He's down on the clock, not something we are very used to seeing. He does keep knight e7 check under check. Meanwhile, d4 still attacked. And queen a3. Watch out for queen a3, rook b2.
I like that. Queen a3, rook b2. Also, the d-pawn is fully hanging. The knight is on one of those weird squares. It's amazing. It's a really good piece. But black is kind of ignoring it. And the pieces are working really well without bothering with any of these squares that the knight controls. So for now, it feels like Hikaru is working around this d6 knight. But remember, moves like h5, Tanya, can just pry open the position. You have to be prepared for h5 basically as soon as possible.
And Hikaru looking into the distance, trying to figure out attacking possibilities. The queen defends the d4 pawn. Is he going to set up the idea of rook b2 via either c3 or a3?
Yeah, rook b2 is an idea. Also taking on e5. It might look crazy to do that when white just doubled the pieces on the f file, but there is rook f8 to challenge things. So I think we're just seeing the queen inch her way into the position here. You mentioned rook b2. It's on tap. The d-pawn is loose. There's also the idea to take on e5 and rook f8 next. This is getting dicey, Tanya.
Oh. It's getting into tactic territory, right? And the blue arrow says rook e1 to go rook e2, a 2nd rank defense. I don't think you can step up or down with the king because you relinquish all control of that 2nd rank. Hikaru will get in the rook, will get in the queen, will give you checkmate, and he does it. I thought rook b2 followed by queen c2, queen d2 is super dangerous.
So I'm wondering if he's counting on queen e1 with the idea that queen takes d4, maybe you take on f6, but the queen could come back and keep everything defended there. I'm surprised we didn't see rook b2. I'm wondering what maybe both players saw that we missed.
But also, he goes the other way. But also after queen e1, there were ideas like queen c2, threatening queen g2 and queen h2. There were so many tempting possibilities. And did Hikaru just realize that he could have gone rook b2? Is that what just happened?
Yeah, it would have been a little bit worse. Because of this pawn capture, the bishop is now really locked out of the action. So it's all about this queen and rook here against white's queen and rook. I think Hikaru he needs the pieces now on the board. I'm starting to get potentially concerned about all the endgames. And rook d3, what a defensive move.
Love it. Offense is the best defense. He wants to trade the rooks. You can get that rook from b2 off the board. That's what you want to do. He stops queen h1 check. The bar doesn't like it. Queen g1?
Yeah, I'm starting to wonder about queen g1, but it's a funny position. The king can run up the board. You have to be damn sure that you're giving checkmate, Tanya, because start to get concerned. So h5 to prevent it.
He's put the king in a kill zone. Now queen g1 would be absolutely deadly. You have one move to fight this, Aman. How do you do it?
I was going to say rook to d1 maybe, but queen c2 not liked, rook b3 allowing the check on b8, and Hikaru says, I got my queen g1 idea. That's all I need, 17 seconds. I've calculated this out.
But can he go rook check and get his knight on f7 and try to get it to g5, give some kind of perpetual? But I think Hikaru's seen a resource to that. If knight f7, you just simply move the bishop. Knight f7 is the move. The blue arrow appears because you're threatening a perpetual. And this is how the game will end.
Bishop h6,
knight g5, knight f7.
I'm wondering about, is there knight g5 now and some sort of rook f,
it's a blunder.
Rook b7, excuse me?
Aman, it's a blunder. Rook b7 and how are you getting the queen into the attack? But he misses it.
That's all you needed. You just needed to play rook check, pawn takes back, the queen covers all the checks. That would have been it. Instead, he's going for more with f5. Oh my goodness.
And now there's a mate in one being threatened. If Hikaru's king survives the check, this is game over for Liem. There's no way you can fight rook h2 or queen h2. But they're just repeating. And that's it. It ends in a draw.
Goodness.
Could he have run away with the king?
So in that final position,
was king g7 possible?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm wondering there. It's a draw by repetition, and believe me, you see the players on the camera there, they are both looking now at the game review, Tanya, because I would be as curious as they are why that position was not continued by Hikaru. The engine is giving king to g7 and saying, yeah, king g7, continue. We know that the rook check is coming, but the king can just keep going. I think what was concerning was maybe a knight f5 check, but honestly, after knight takes f5, you can just take it back. And Tanya, there's just no way to continue as long as you avoid the rook checks. You've got it. King g6 next.
And that would have been Hikaru's third win in a row. But what a crazy, crazy game that was. And we can see Hikaru on our camera right now. I think he's still analyzing it and he realizes what he just missed in that final position, Aman. And he knows that was completely winning for him. All he had to do was play king g7. And I have to say that was slightly uncharacteristic because Hikaru does that, I would say, 9.5 out of 10 times.
Yeah, he's always fighting for that win. Now, at the same time, he's not looking to take unnecessary risk. And to be fair to Hikaru, a move prior, there was a win missed by Liem. Knight g5 check was 100% winning on the spot, basically unstoppable checkmate had he found the correct order of moves. So honestly, both players missing a complete win. Tanya, maybe a draw is the fair result.
What an up and down game. You know, man, they say not all draws are created equal. You have the boring ones, the out of the opening, you know, sometimes the safe play, the cautious play. And then you have draws like these where the bar is going crazy, we're going crazy. One person's winning, then the other's winning. And in the end, there are chances for both sides. But in the end, you know, it was a big fight, ended in a draw, which means it's 2.5 to 1.5 as we're going into our first break. And we've got a match on our hands. And what a treat to our eyes this is turning out to be. And man, speaking of eyes, you know, you've got to take care of them, man. Very, very important. And you know who does that best? It's Zenny. So I'm going to remind everyone that Chess.com is excited to announce Zenny as our official eyewear partner. Offering high-quality glasses at affordable prices, Zenny has got your eyes covered, including technologies like blue light blocking, very important in today's time, especially considering how much time we spend on our computers and screen, light adaptation, and polarized lenses. For those of us who rack up screen time, sign me up for it. Screen time with Chess, blue light glasses are a must. So through October 31st, Zenny is hooking you up with a 15% off. You can do that with the purchase code SCC15. Use the command Zenny in chat to find your next pair of glasses. We're going to be right back with the second half of 5+1 right after this short break. What a match we've got.
The Esports World Cup 2025 was electric. The best games played by the best teams. Our esports arenas sold out. We filmed them with hundreds of thousands of roaring fans, including 2,000 of the most dedicated supporters coming from our Super Fans program who came to Riyadh to cheer on their favorite teams. We had more than 4,000 media outlets covering all the action on site and broadcasting the EWC around the globe. Esports World Cup 2025 was bigger, louder, and even more unforgettable, and celebrating those who proved they are the best in the world.
Everybody has days where they just don't feel up for it. You look in the mirror and you're not your full self. Neurogum, energy and focus. I know a guy who uses the gum to help get ready for his day. And it tastes good. That's the energy and focus this guy needs to go bring smiles to the faces of chess pieces everywhere. There he is. That's my guy. Always forward, never back. Neurogum, helping little pawns feel big since 2015.
Clutch Chess Champion Showdown is here, and 4 superstars take the stage. World number 1, Magnus Carlsen, Hikaru Nakamura, Fabiano Caruana, and reigning world champion, Gukesh Damaraju. With more than $400,000 on the line, daily win bonuses, escalating point values, and the one-of-a-kind Champions Jackpot, every game could change everything. It all unfolds October 27th through 29th, live from the brand new playing halls of the St. Louis Chess Club. Don't miss a moment of chess history in the making.
My name is Jules Schulman, and I am joined by Grandmaster Fabiano Caruana to figure out how well you and Hikaru know each other.
Oh, okay.
So I have questions for you. So how many subscribers on YouTube and followers on Twitch does Hikaru have combined?
I saw something recently that he got 2 million on Twitch, so I saw the announcement somewhere. So going 2 million Twitch and 2.5 YouTube, I'll say 4.5 million total.
Wow, I think that's exactly correct.
Yeah. Actually, I don't check his channel, but I just remember seeing the announcement like 2 days ago or something. So some luck there.
How many times has Fabiano won the US championship?
Okay, so Fabiano, he didn't win in 2020, so at least there's no asterisk. He's won it 4 times. 4 times he's won the US championship.
Correct. When is Hikaru's birthday?
When is his birthday? I actually don't think I have any clue. I'm gonna say end of the year. I don't know why, but like I know Magnus is in December. I'm gonna go Hikaru in November, but I wouldn't even be able to guess the date, and probably the month is wrong, and I have no idea.
December 9th?
Oh, should have gone December.
What state was Fabiano born?
Okay, also very easy. He was born. He was born in Florida, but more specifically Miami.
In what popular HBO series did Hikaru have a cameo in a few years back?
This one I know because I was also invited, but then they went with Hikaru. It was Billions.
At what age did Fabiano become a grandmaster?
Okay, became a grandmaster at 15. He definitely broke it. I'm trying to remember, was he 15 or was he 14? It was like 15 years, 87 days. For whatever reason, I mean, I don't know for sure, but for some reason 14 is not ringing a bell. So I think he was also 15, but like just a couple of days. So I think he was 15. If he was 14, I'd be surprised, but I'll go with 15.
I think it's 14 years, 11 months.
Ah, it wasn't even 15. Okay.
We're back with the second half of 5+1. It's the 5-time SCC champion Hikaru Nakamura taking on the 2013 World Blitz champion, making his debut, Liem, in a Speed Chess Championship. And it was Liem who got the first round win. This is where we stand 2.5 to 1.5, a 1-point lead in Amman. It's absolutely essential for Liem to not let Hikaru win another game. He needs to find a way to equalize the match or stop the bleeding. But once Hikaru starts running away with it, that's going to be impossible to surmount.
Yeah, it's important to get it early because a lead is going to be truly impossible to come back from, knowing that Bullet is ahead. For a match that's 99 to 1, right? The pre-match prediction. I have to say, there's been so many chances. This is exactly the match you want if you're Liem. Hikaru has not played his best so far. He's shown his resourcefulness, but he's shown that side, Tanya, because he hasn't been in the best position. So Lekwang has had some great positions. He's had some wins that he himself has missed. So just looking at what he can fix, it's those moments near the end, realizing that Hikaru is making mistakes there that he can capitalize on.
But I'll tell you, Aman, what else Hikaru is showing us, that he's ready to play anything today. You know, we've seen the Tromposki by him. We've seen him start with d4 with bishop f4 next, switch the opening up there. And now it's the first time that he's employed the king's pawn opening against Liem in this one. We see the moves coming in, and I think this was also part of something that we expected, the bigger opening story by Hikaru, where in the 5+1, he wants to feel out his opponent to really understand their preparation, how much in form they are. And that looks like part of the match strategy. What do you make of what we have out of the opening right now?
Yeah, and Hikaru is so experienced, obviously just as a player himself, an online player, but also a Speed Chess Championship participant. He knows exactly how these matches go, what information you want out of your opponent early on in the match. And here, we're seeing a different idea. Instead of the knight e2, we're seeing knight f3, so less of the immediate f4 plan. He wants to see maybe how Lekwang is going to react to this. In the last position where we saw f4, it went really well. So it's not to say that Hikaru is done with that opening, never going to play it again, but he's using this 5-minute portion to just try out different positions.
And he might be looking at the f4 break. He might also at the right time be looking at expanding with d4 at the right moment, which requires little protection in the center. Right now, Lekwang Liem, he's opened up the path for his own queen to come to f6 and also stop the idea of knight g3.
Yeah, knight h5 is actually a really nice move against a knight on e2. The same thing can be said for knight h4 against knight e7, because the knight really wants to go to that next square on g3. And you also are supporting the f4 push yourself. So it's kind of a relationship between pieces that you see very often, and your move, queen f6, would be definitely a natural follow-up. I'm wondering about Hikaru's d4 move, and I'm kind of expecting that he wants to move this knight, maybe to h2, maybe to d2, and try to play f4 still.
It's going to be about when those central breaks do come. Meanwhile, Liem advancing on the other flank, clamping down the b-pawn a little bit. And finally, Hikaru, he doesn't skip a beat. He goes for g4, pushing the knight back, and now getting his own knight to g3. Knight f5 looking juicy as well next.
Yep, knight h7, kind of going for the exact same idea. It's much slower for Lekwang because of the time lost, but I think he's looking at knight f8, maybe knight g6 or knight e6, and then sinking a knight into the f4 square. So d4, Hikaru's saying, well, let me open the center. Now that I see this long plan you're going for, I'm not going to give you time to execute it.
It's a lot of knight jumps by Liem in the last couple of moves, only to trade that knight off.
Yeah. A lot of work for maybe a little gain, but it's the little things that matter. Trading off that knight means that you're taking control of some of these dark squares, and I am noticing a lot of light square pawns for Hikaru, which what we talked about earlier really restricts that light square bishop. But getting to an endgame, Tanya, with the queens off the board, that can actually suddenly be a good sign for Lekwang.
And will he trade, or does he want to trade on his own terms is the question. Does he keep the tension as is? The answer is a yes. He defends a5, freeing up the rook on a8 to come into the game. Hikaru continues gaining more space on the left flank, and somewhere Lekwang Liem is setting up king g7 ideas, maybe getting the rook to the h line now, targeting the h3 tender pawn.
Yeah, and we're going to see a very solid approach here, like the pawn going to f3. This h-pawn always needs attention, whether it's going to be the king or just the rook in the future. Perhaps even the knight could find its way to the f2 square, where it just permanently defends that. And I was about to say, all of the action is about to shift to the other side of the board, Tanya, but Lekwang shifts there first and wants to do it maybe before knight c3, where I think all of Black's ideas would basically be thwarted.
And Hikaru isn't pleased to see that. Liem going on the offense, you know, he's playing actively, and I think you need to do that. Against a player like Hikaru, you can't just sit and expect good things to happen to you. You have these opportunities to break out. You need to do it. If pawn takes pawn, that would just mean the b file is open for the black rook to swoop over and start attacking some of Hikaru's weaknesses. If not, I think rook b8 any way to follow up and then threatening the b2 pawn after a trade.
Yes, c5 and rook c1. I was actually wondering if maybe the other rook would make an appearance on c1, but this is a typical idea. you don't want to open the B file. So instead, you want to open the C file. So your rooks are actually the ones doing something. Because the bishop is on the board, we've been talking about these light square pawns. They're great when the queens are on the board. They restrict the bishop in the mid game. But we've seen how that's transformed here. Suddenly, they're starting to become, some targets here. The bishop might come to C6, might capture next. There's going to be some weaknesses. So let's see how Hikaru navigates this position. Of course, the C pawn is just hanging, and Hikaru eventually needs to take that to restore the material balance.
And he might just do it at this moment, but he does take a pause. So there are other things going on in his head. If he takes the C6 pawn immediately, bishop takes pawn would hit E4, not giving you enough time to capture on C5. Happily,
yeah, I think he might consider it, right? He could take that variation, take on C5, bishop takes E4, maybe knight C3 afterwards, try to take on E5. There's a lot of hanging pawns for black. They're all sort of situated on that 5th rank.
And I think these are the lines that are going through Hikaru's head right now as he does slow down. If you do take rook takes pawn, that's also very tempting because it kind of forces a decision in the center and you'll be left with a passed D pawn. Rook takes pawn, pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn. And the black bishop remains, and I think we have that line on the board, the bishop remains restricted. Knight C3, knight E4 coming in next.
Exactly. After rook to C8, you have that question, which is more important, the C or the E file? And by capturing and playing knight C3, Hikaru is saying, well, pay attention. The E file is actually what I'm after here. If we see pawn to F6, might be exactly what you were talking about. The rook can swing to A1, to E1 to keep attacking these pawns. Meanwhile, that knight is going to make an appearance on the E4 square.
And even though the bar says the endgame is level, I'm liking the activity, the piece activity and the pawn placement of white. That D5, a beautiful passer, A5 pawn weak, the knight having some good spots. And I think for now, Hikaru is probably feeling positive about his chances. Liem getting the king to the center of the board.
Yeah, instinctively, it feels like a slightly odd move to not play, pawn to F6 there, connecting everything. But his evaluation, I think, was also playing into the fact that maybe there's like rook A1 and B4 ideas. So he's giving up this pawn here, and I'm expecting pawn to F6. Yep, got to play that to defend G5, right?
I think it was the only move, right? You've got to attack the rook, get some tempo, and then eventually maybe even hit the knight and get your rook to the 2nd rank to try to activate it. I like the move F5. It stops knight E4 before you go B4, sorry.
Yep, that's a great point, actually. Stopping knight E4 is the actual purpose of this move. And the fact that you're even threatening the G-pawn, I think that's just a side quest. Like, that's not really that important. So much so that Hikaru correctly understands it's time to push the D-pawn and make space for that knight to move.
But in that, you also give up a very key pawn of your own. Rook takes D6, and I'm trying to find the follow-up here. So knight F6 hits the bishop because there was no good way to defend it, and we get into a pure rook pawn ending. Rook E5 coming in, attacking every single pawn on the board. Well, except one.
Yeah, the issue is that the black king is nowhere near the action, and so rook D3 making the threats before white can just hop in with rook E5. I think this move was maybe underestimated by Hikaru, but if anyone's better, it feels like it's going to be Hikaru here.
This particular position, he's up 2 pawns, right? He's about to lose one, either the H3 or the B3 pawn. And I think he'll go for some on his own right now. If anyone's pushing, it has to be white, but I don't think it's going to be enough. It just feels far too liquidated. Rook takes B3, attacks B2 pawn. So I think it was really important that Liem picks up H3 before heading to the other side.
Exactly. And this B pawn is going to disappear. These pawns, if they were connected, Tanya, it would be a different story. If the pawn on G6 was maybe back on G3, you could work those pawns one by one up the board. Here, I just think they're a little bit too disconnected that the black king is going to be able to pick the G6 pawn up.
And the B4 pawn is also a distraction that's going to be used as one to get the white rook away from the defense of the pawns on that right flank. You could start pushing B3 or come up with your own king to G7, threatening rook C6, winning the pawn on the next move. Yeah, I think this is a draw offer.
It really is. Rook B6 can be played if you don't take that pawn. At this level, this endgame is relatively trivial. I do think we'll see it played on here, but everyone knows that this should be a draw. And I mean, it doesn't hurt to try.
We'll see a draw offer. I think you're on point. We might even see this go down to a king pawn versus king stalemate at the very end. But as long as black's king is right in front of that passed pawn in these rook pawn endings, this is trivial for them. Just to place the rook at the right square on the defending side. And Hikaru just gets up and leaves, but comes right back as there's a move on the board.
Yeah, what you really didn't need to allow, in my opinion, was the white rook to b6. If black had just taken control of the 6th rank, I think that would have been a little bit smarter, because I do think that Liem is making himself defend this in the most difficult way possible, but he definitely is defending it, and I certainly expect he knows how to do this. Still, there was a much easier defense that involved sort of cutting the king off. Let's see if he defends properly.
And the one you're talking about, I think it's the Philidor defense, where you make sure that the white king doesn't cross over without having to push the pawn, which causes problems of its own by some back checks. This is the short side defense, as we call it in chess, where you put the king, the defending king, on the short side and the rook on the long side to give as many checks from the 7th and the 6th rank as possible. Definitely the harder one, but Liem looking confident.
Absolutely, and it's something I would expect him to, like an area I would expect him to be confident in. He's definitely got this draw. It's just a question of whether the move orders will confuse him at all, but it's looking pretty flawless so far. All it takes is one move, though.
And very often, that's all Hikaru needs. One move. I mean, you look at him, he almost looks like he's on the hunt. He knows that there was a more elementary defense in this position, which Liem did not go for. He's going to try his best to trick him.
Yeah, we're just seeing the rook's shuffling here. The defense is really that you leave the rook behind the pawn, and if the king gets checked, you go up to h7. Otherwise, you're just kind of shuffling, repeating. The one thing that Hikaru has done is get the time a little bit lower, right? It's now under 10 seconds, but Liem, if he holds this draw, that will be a nice bit of confidence for him going forward.
I think he absolutely must hold this draw. If he doesn't hold this draw, we could be seeing the start of the end right here. So he needs to make sure that the defense that he started, he's able to finish it off. He gives the check. So far, so good.
Yep. Rook takes on g7 can't happen, but king h6 can.
Oh my goodness!
That's incredible.
No! Liem got forced into a lost king pawn endgame.
How does he do it? It's almost like Hikaru can't even believe how good it was. Like, this is why you play them on. You can't tell Hikaru not to play those positions on, Tanya, when he ends up winning them.
It is unbelievable. It is unreal. It's almost like a cheat code that Hikaru has, the way he's able to trick his opponent in these positions. He keeps mounting the pressure, move after move, and they all crack.
That's truly incredible. Almost, I find myself saying that a lot, right? When it comes to Hikaru's matches and his games, there's always something incredible that we see, and it's like, can he top it again? It feels like he might have just done that, because to win that position against someone that clearly, Tanya, understood the defensive mechanism, like to a T, was doing it absolutely perfectly, and yet still slipped due to the pressure, due to the guy he was playing. We talk about the Magnus effect. Is this the Hikaru effect?
It's for real. It does exist. And Hikaru also, just like Magnus when it comes to these formats, lives rent-free in his colleagues' heads. And that's what we saw just being played out. Liem is a world-class player. He knows these endgames at the back of his hand. He knows how to defend them. The F-passer, the king in front, you have everything set up for yourself. Hikaru, he just keeps playing. Move after move. He's playing it fast. He keeps putting pressure. He's not hitting the draw button. He's not offering it. He's not giving it. He's making you sweat. And then suddenly out of nowhere, it's draw, 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 draw until it's not. You make a blunder and that's it. Hikaru Nakamura wins.
And let's get right into this game right here. I do see the chat hinting, I guess Hikaru is obviously streaming, and he said that he would gift 100 subs if his opponent couldn't draw this, probably as one of those things you say because it's almost like a compliment to the opponent. It's like, it's no chance it's going to happen, so in the event it doesn't, here's this crazy thing I'll do. Well, I would I guess you're looking at 100 subs for a win. You know, that's not a bad going rate. Tanya, what do you think?
Not a bad trade at all, especially not at this stage with the London finals in line and every single match of these. And this is what we have. The thing is, for Liem now, it's also become such a psychological battle, right? Because you're thinking about what happened in game 2, where you should have just been winning throughout. And that goes out of your hand. And then what just happened in the previous game? How are you not able to hold this position against Hikaru? You call it the Hikaru effect. It is what we're seeing being played out. And is that a blunder by Hikaru Nakamura that just gives up a pawn? Knight takes pawn. You can't pin the knight because knight takes bishop is a check.
Yep, knight takes c6, the blue arrow from the computer here indicating that is the best move and necessary move to maintain the advantage that the computer sees here. Just reinforcing, Tanya, that despite the 3.5, 1.5 score, despite everything we've seen, the amazing swindles from Hikaru, still Likwang Liem is getting some good playable positions, some clear advantages. So you can't say that this has just been like a one-sided match. The scoreline is one-sided, but the positions have not been.
The score doesn't tell the full story of how the match has progressed. It doesn't even tell half the story of how things have gone in the actual game. But that's the thing about Hikaru, right? It's so much about the clock as well. It's so much about those final moments that are extremely decisive with him. And there we see more pawns dropped off there. That's one extra pawn for white and looks pretty healthy. Now the knight can come out, can develop by recapturing the bishop.
Yep, everything looks good here. The A pawn is very weak as well on the A file. We have two connected central pawns here. This is a beautiful position for Likwang Liem. He just needs to, you're kind of looking to connect the pawns here, maybe solve your development problems. You get the knight on F3, pawn to E3, you're home free. So I think the next couple moves here are absolutely crucial for Hikaru to generate some type of counterplay, some type of initiative, whether that's knight into e4, rook to c2. He needs something that doesn't just let white, play all the basic moves and enjoy those extra bits of material that he's collected.
He continues to put pressure on e2. Will he have enough time to defend the a6 pawn? Rook takes pawn is the next threat. Attacks with b4. The knight can jump to the center of the board, hitting the queen and the pawn on b4. I think we're going to see some trades. And in the end, Hikaru, b4 falls and the a6 pawn as well.
Yeah, so it's going to be a two-pawn advantage if you can win b4. But I have to say, it does seem unlikely that white's going to be able to keep both of these pawns in this position. So let's see. It might immediately be a two-pawn advantage, but it just looks difficult to keep the b and the d pawn both protected.
But this is tricky, right, Aman? Because he forced the rook into passivity. Liem did by this last move. The knight couldn't have moved because knight e7 was a fork, winning that rook on c8. So the only rook that's active is 1. So you're going to win that b4 pawn. But before that, he makes a square for the king. So rook d3 would defend b3 if needed.
I think he's trying to get rook b2, knight e7 check, and then knight c6. But it doesn't quite win this knight because of rook c8. So there are definitely some lines to calculate there, but I believe that's what he's looking at. The other way you can do that is knight b4, and I guess it makes more sense to take the pawn first.
And I agree with painless 4-7-8 with our feature chat. I think that wasn't a painless loss for Liem in that last round. But so far, it looks like he has recovered from it. Rook d3 defends, and now knight takes pawn, a big threat going up by material. And that should be enough. Also, let's point out, Aman, rook d3 threatens rook f3 at the right time to assist that rook on a7.
Okay, and what did we just see here? Because I think knight takes b4 could have happened, and it would have just been the same idea of knight c6. So I wonder if Likwang almost did the same mistake that I did when calculating. It's like knight e7, c6. Well, why wouldn't you take a pawn and go there anyway?
That's a great question because the rook on d6 feels a lot more active than on d8, was also threatening rook f6. So rook takes pawn, attacks the knight on f8. And I think 2 pawns should be enough. If rook takes knight, the d pawn will start rolling up the board.
Yeah, you said 2 pawns. It's, almost in some cases 3 pawns because, for example, here, d5, if knight c5 happens, I think the reason that this is one of those moves the engine is spotting is that white can also start to think not just about the pawns and the pass pawn, but also the black king. So you can switch your attention to the other side of the board.
Aman, Liam has to get this one. He can't bungle this up. You know, it's happened before in the round. It's happened before in the match. But this win is extremely important. And he's very close. And this is the storyline, right? He's been better in so many of the positions. But just at the very end, things fall apart. 97, knight f5 ideas.
Yep, and that can't keep happening. Hikaru is a tough enough opponent just on his own, right? But if you're also missing the few opportunities you get, it's just even tougher. So you can't also be an opponent to yourself as well. Hikaru is tough enough to handle.
Hikaru is just insane. I don't even know how he does what he does. You know, the kind of chess he produces, the turnarounds that he does, and he's doing all of this while streaming, while talking to his community and his chat. It blows my mind.
Yeah, and it really is. It's like a comfort thing as well. I would always make the argument, Tanya, that anybody does not play better chess while streaming. The multitasking that you do, interacting, it has to take away from it, but it's a comfort thing. Honestly, it's a service, right? People want to see it. So he's providing that for everyone, and he's still providing the wins as well. So not missing a beat.
But he's got to be careful in this position. I mean, he's still down 2 pawns, completely winning for Liem. Hikaru is going to try to set up those tricks. The problem in the position for Black is rook on the second rank looks really active, but there's really no way to find an assist for that rook. The knight on c5 can't jump to d3, can't jump to e4. The f line under control.
Yeah, I was wondering if there was a little moment for knight e6, strange move in that previous position, forking the two rooks. It wasn't played, and now we see rook to f6, losing a knight. This is bailout. I think we're going to see h5, and I imagine king h4, king h6 will be tried. But yeah, if you take, the king does escape.
That was a checkmate in one being threatened, so king h4 was important to try to run away to the g5 square. And the thing is, if you don't capture on h2, that pawn will be defended. There'll be no checkmates. And then the d pawn just starts rolling up the board. You could go d6 now.
Yeah, I would still be concerned about rook h2 and stuff. I think the issue is king h6 was still in the air without rook d6 as an answer. So optically, he said, let me just bring the king up. I should be okay here. Is he going to play like rook f4, trying to get that king out? You have to worry about maybe dropping too many pawns.
I mean, the material is quite crazy here because white has this d pawn, but it's still 2 versus 2 now. There's no extra pawns for white anymore. And Hikaru's creating some counterplay. The knight on c6 a bit offside while the checks are happening.
Yep. Maybe we'll see rook g5 to try to hang on to the h-pawn, but rook takes g3 and king g6 I could also see as well. White still hasn't found the time to really get the pieces going.
Yeah, but you've got that knight, right? So you've got to be winning this completely. I think it's just got to be a matter of time. And Liam's doing a pretty good job on the clock as well. It's Hikaru with 15 seconds.
Yep. Yeah, but Hikaru is quite good with 15 seconds. So I feel like if it gets down to 15 apiece, you almost start to get nervous for Lekwang. So he's doing things the classical way. He's putting the rook behind the pawn. He wants to move this rook from d7 and finally get that going.
This is a bit scary because Hikaru's managed to get 2 passers as well, connected ones. The d5 pawn hasn't moved, but is he setting up checkmating ideas already? Now the rook looking at coming to f7 to block any attack on the king.
I was going to say, I wonder about knight d8 to stop rook f7, but he decides to just go straight for it. Anyway, knight centralizes, and I think this rook intending to go to g6 here is quite powerful.
He has to win. Liam has to win this position. He's up a knight, the d5 pawn. That's a monster. That's finally moving up the board. And I don't think anything's stopping d7, d8. You could put your rook, well, I was going to say on the 4th rank as well. And there we have it. He's about to win the rook as well.
Yeah, I think you probably could have queened there. He's probably trying to find a way. Is it possible for me to interpose something on the d file so that my opponent can't even sack for it? But ultimately, no. He decides to just do this. This is 100% winning. You just need to bring the knight back as well. But let's just see this conversion, Tanya.
And Liam will show the way. And that's it, as he does. And now Rook G3 to follow, that would have been over. And Liem, he gets his second win, takes it to 2.5, just a 1 point margin. And you know what, Aman? Liem has already proven our prediction model wrong, which gave him a 1.5 points in the 5+1 section. He says, wait and watch.
Yeah, exactly. The 1% was coming from basically only scoring 1.5 points in each section. So 2.5 already exceeding expectations, horrid AI expectations. But what we can say is that Lekwang Liem has 2.5, and he could easily have 3.5, 4.5 points, depending on how some of those results went. Can't be thinking too much in hindsight, but I will say just having the types of games where he could be even scoring better, and to have 2.5 points on the board, only being down 1 at the moment, it's a good spot to be in. And this was the strong start to the Blitz that we were talking about in the pre-show.
And the reason for that is we were discussing it so much that going into those shorter time controls, Liem has to make sure that Hikaru isn't running away with a big margin. He needs to stay within the 1 point distance to have a real shot, a real chance when we go into those shorter time formats. Because if it gets the bullet, that is Hikaru's kingdom, right? That's his safety net. He'll be looking at that as something where he just puts the finishing blow, or even if by chance he's behind in the match, he's trailing, he'll look at his comeback in that bullet portion.
Yep, exactly right. A lot of upsets or underdogs think, let me try to just keep it even, or maybe be slightly down going into the bullet. Anything can happen. But against Hikaru, you almost have to have the opposite. You probably need to perform in the blitz portion, because Hikaru is one of those top players that actually has bullet as an incredible skill set to go along with his blitz prowess.
And I think the storyline that we're seeing developing here with Liem having these better positions out of the opening, so much of it also comes from Liem being this fundamentally classical player who's had most of his practice in over-the-board chess. He relies so much on opening preparation as well as deep calculation. So I think this 5+1 and 3+1, huge segments for Liem. And so far, I have to say, has been impressive. His control on the clock and also the kind of positions that he's been getting.
Yep, certainly has so far. And I do expect Hikaru to naturally just gain a little bit more of an advantage every time the clock, the time control gets shorter. So the 5 minute I expect to be Lekwang Liem's best segment. And he's certainly playing like it so far. Knight to h4 to f5 in this position, always difficult to remove this knight on f5. Like, it's such an annoying piece. The first thing that you just have to think about is, what happens if knight e4, but even if you would lose the knight on f5, you can throw in a sneaky desperado knight takes on h6. But Tanya, that knight on f5 is really annoying.
Especially when you don't have that light square. Bishop has been traded off. That becomes even more powerful. Moves like g6 to kick it out, never possible because h6 is weak. Right now, black gets his own threat in, stopped by g3, because white's pawn structure on the king side a lot more flexible.
Yeah, and I think c takes d3. I mean, you can take back with the rook and just maintain control, but Hikaru sees the opportunity, perhaps in the future, you don't need to rush, for just pawn to d4. And then eventually, if that pawn takes, you can play f4, and you kind of have this nice blockade on the queenside pawns. So I feel like with f3, he's kind of setting up the idea in the future of playing d4.
And he also created a really nice retreating square for the bishop on f2. I think you're on point. We might see d4 happen sooner rather than later. But right now, Liem really nicely first drove the bishop away and then brings the knight back to get rid of that very strong piece.
I wonder, I was going to say about bishop b6, whether you want to trade that dark square bishop off the board or not. We see knight f8 to go to e6, and it's a similar idea of just everyone knows that d4 is the target. This knight is even going to b4 to hit c6, but maybe to drop back to c2. d4 is the square that everyone wants to control here.
And then you're also trying to provoke c5 so that you get hold of the d5 square. So knight a2, knight b4, quite a nice maneuver there being set up. And if black was to push c5 preemptively, the knight just jumps straight back, attacking b5 and going over to d5. I'm still liking black's position because d3 feels like a big weakness in this.
Yeah, the d3 pawn it's kind of like this pseudo weakness. By definition, it is just a backwards pawn. And if black plays c5, it will really be held down. But the pawn chain here just is so important to actually maintain the integrity, not to push any of these pawns. And because Hikaru knows that, he also knows he'll probably be able to play d4 at some point this game.
He needs to make sure he gets that in. Right now, the knight finds itself on a nice c5 square. Almost feels like a little bit of a progress there by Hikaru as he lines up against the c6 pawn. I think it's a fight between who gets to d3 first, or will it be Hikaru to c6 first?
Yep, and rook c1, we see giving up maybe on this d4 idea for now, and instead clamping on the c5 square. Bishop takes, because I think the knight wants to come to e6, so it's got me wondering, do we have time for f6? Queen c2, though, you're going to have to do something awkward. Maybe rook d6, rook b5. What happens there?
With the queen pinned on c2, and Hikaru spots your idea, which is why Liem needs to go for the counter offense. Rook takes pawn. He wants to come in with his own queen, threatening d3 right now.
Yep. Yeah, and the king has a nice square on f7, so any type of endgame where you trade queens and go to pin this knight, the king just steps aside, and I think going into this endgame that the knight is going to be a more dangerous piece than this bishop, so that's probably why Hikaru is saying, no, hang on a sec, let's not go right into that endgame just yet.
He needs to keep the mages on the board, and that's because all the pawns on the left flank are on the light square, so you don't have targets if you're Hikaru in that endgame. So he does instead defend d3. Well, f4 would be the move that you want to get in, but that would create so many weaknesses around White's king.
Yeah, I almost wonder about queen e2 now that I see h5, maybe with the idea of f4, with the extra idea of queen takes h5. If knight e6 gets played, then you can take on c6, because you don't have time for queen takes d3. So there's this little tactic here, which is keeping the knight on the f8 square, and you really don't want to go to g6. So I thought maybe queen e2, but instead a calm bishop e3.
But these are the moves that are so difficult to handle, right? Because they just keep the tension on the board as is. You want to play knight e6, but not possible. So you end up making a less than ideal move. You place a rook on a less active file. But for now, he keeps c6 defended, and perhaps knight e6 in the air, f4 arrives.
Yeah, finally we see this f4 push. Queen e2, to me, is an important move. You have to take with the bishop, which I think is not ideal. You might want to take with that pawn if your queen was already on e2, but we're seeing a lot of squares being controlled here by Liem, and if you take on c6, there was going to be a lot of checks in that position.
And the position is completely transformed. The pawn formation, totally different. 3 pawn islands for white. The d pawn can start going up the board. Queen f2, keeping it close to the white king. Knight g6 coming in with a big threat. Sidestepped. Knight takes pawn was the idea.
Yeah, and queen f3, which looks like a natural move, would have made knight takes h4 absolutely game winning. So not falling into that one, but using the same idea, pushing c5 and saying you cannot take this because of the threats of knight takes f4, knight takes h4. What is Hikaru going to do? Because the feeling is that Lekwang has kind of wrangled a little bit of an initiative over the last series of moves.
And that's what he felt, right? You want to make a move like f4, but that could weaken white's king. And that's exactly how this is played out. The white queen is now overloaded to stay close to the king to keep things defended, which gives a free hand to Liem on the left flank. Opening up, Hikaru feeling the pressure.
Exactly. The center is being undermined here. The knight is just performing better than the bishop. The bishop's trying to control all the squares the knight wants to move to, but it's so easy to just attack the bishop. It has to move away. You're grabbing the c-pawn with maybe the rook here even. I love the knight versus the bishop in the endgame.
And the knight is not only a great attacker, but a fantastic defender to its own king as well. Just making sure that there are no big checks. There's no mate when you've got a knight right next to your king. Queen takes pawn. Well, 2 of them currently attacked. Is he going to go queen f3, trying to activate to come to that f2 square?
Yeah, queen f3 is a nice way to kind of get, I guess maybe just going for a draw could be the problem with that, is Lekwang is maybe thinking about more. And hang on, queen d3 here looks like an amazing move. Potentially missed because I think you have to take this. What else can you do? The bishop is hanging. That's a mistake.
A huge mistake. The queen was spinning the knight, so you couldn't move it away anymore. And look at that, deflecting the bishop. Bishop takes knight d2 and the white king is too far away. Otherwise, black's king just comes forward, the knight assisting the pawn. King e1, king f5, king e4.
Yeah, so you want to play king f5 here. You're going to drop the g7 pawn, it feels like the right idea, but I can understand why he's holding back here. This is a very, very tricky position. I wonder if the idea is really to play d2 to keep bringing the king in. This is very tough to navigate, but I think you have to really commit here with king f5. No, he goes back to f7.
He's playing it safe. He just wants to push the g-pawn, and then he's saying Hikaru has no moves. I have all the time in the world to do that exact same idea, but make sure the g-pawn remains alive. Now king f5, d2, deflect the white king. He goes the other way.
Yeah, at this point, the knight can do anything it wants, right? You can attack the g-pawn at will. You can bring the king to b3. This should be a win. It will be very disappointing for Lê Quang not to win this game.
Now he's got to do it knight f3, a big fork in the air. With Lê Quang Liem with 15 seconds on the clock, can he convert this big advantage that he has? Gives a check.
d2. Usually you don't want to play d2. I don't like that move. You want to be on the light squares here. And Hikaru, his resilience is amazing to watch.
It again pays off because Liem just doesn't have enough time on the clock. But it's still a difficult hold. Now he's threatening to take on d2, and he does. The pawn's off the board.
Yeah, you're really not supposed to win this with white ever. The thing is, your king is kind of locked away on b1. So if black just moves the knight around, there isn't anything you can realistically do. But be careful not to allow knight d2. Oh my goodness.
Whoa.
Look at this.
Oh my goodness.
He's going for the win.
Unbelievable. And he is about to win because the a-pawns are unstoppable now. The knight falls back, but the bishop comes back, and black's king is the one that's offside, and Hikaru Nakamura does it again.
Like I said, it's just amazing to watch. You can tell that you're sat watching something that shouldn't happen, and it continues to happen. Hikaru has not had the better side of these endgames, of these positions. I'm just going to say that endgame was on the engine as much as -6, and it ends as a win for Hikaru Nakamura with a bishop, all his pawns on the same color as his bishop, not a target in sight. How do you win those positions?
It's unbelievable. I mean, I just don't even know what else to say about this. There's just absolutely no universe where this kind of stuff happens against world-class players. You know, you're just lost in every aspect of the board. The one thing going in your direction, the one thing working for you is the clock. And that's what Hikaru uses so incredibly well. And that seems like it's enough for him. He could be completely busted, completely lost, no material on the board, nothing's moving, and yet he finds a way to win. I am gobsmacked, man.
Yeah, there's no words for this because we're watching a world-class player lose those positions. Like Lê Quang Liem is probably going to look at those positions after the match and be like, I actually have no explanation for, maybe I don't win them, but to lose them is another story. So Hikaru is, if he's winning positions like that, Tanya, I'm really doubtful that Lê Quang can do anything in this match because it's just, if you're not winning those, I mean, the other positions are going to be even tougher for you.
I mean, just watching Hikaru play and just his skill set and how he uses every aspect, just his psychological presence on the board, a complete game changer is Hikaru Nakamura as he takes a big lead of 4.5 to 2.5. That's a 2-point deficit going into our next segment. And speaking of game changers, Chess.com is thrilled to support fellow game changer Chess Up, the record-breaking company taking the gaming world by storm with their brand new Chess Up 2. This physical electronic board, it syncs to your Chess.com rated games, and you can then save and analyze them on Chess.com. It's got a built-in Wi-Fi, a touchscreen, and touch-sense pieces. Chess Up 2 supports players of all levels. It's got over 500,000 Chess.com games which have already been played on the Chess Up 2. And now, we are hooking you up with a 10% off when you use the code CCT10. So right now, head over to playchessup.com or use the command chessup in chat to unlock this very cool limited time offer. We're going to go into a short break, but when we come back, it gets faster, it gets more furious. It goes into the 3+1.
Has this ever happened to you?
Oh, shoot. Another mouse slip.
What about this?
Oh, well, holy bishops en passant. I think I'm getting carpal tunnel. If only there was a way to play online chess with a real-life board.
What if I told you you can with Chess Up 2? That's right. With Chess Up 2, you can now play over the board online.
Wow.
Simply connect your Chess.com account to our state-of-the-art Chess Up 2 and get a game started. Every time you move, our revolutionary board will transmit the data online directly to your opponent. And as soon as they move, squares will light up, signifying which piece is going where.
Well, shucks. This Hikaru guy seems pretty good.
With Chess Up 2, mouse slips and sore wrists are a thing of the past.
My carpal tunnel is gone. Well, this sure is fun. I'm playing online against my new friend Hikaru. Who needs a family? But I sure do miss clicking on a piece and seeing all of my available moves, like they have on Chess.com.
Well, Danny, you're in luck. This feature is totally available on the Chess Up 2 as well.
Wow. Well, I'm convinced. But hey, what if I don't just want to play an opponent online? What if I want to use one of Chess.com's other great tools?
I thought you'd never ask. With Chess Up 2, you can fully take advantage of the Chess.com integration by playing bots, analyzing your offline games, and even using our optional AI assistants to visualize the quality of moves with color-coded hints.
Well, holy Chess Up, you did it. You made IRL chess cool again.
You got it, Danny.
And how do you know my name?
Play chess today on the board of tomorrow.
Can you handle it? Where grandmasters don't just move pieces, they cast spells.
Oh boy, didn't see that one coming.
Victory doesn't come easy.
Wait, queen time?
Oh shoot, I just lost the piece. Yeah, but I got no mana.
This isn't your classic chessboard.
The thing about the imposter is that if you swap it like
It's not just a game, it's a battleground of minds.
Let's have some fun, you know? Let's have some fun.
When the greatest minds meet magic, anything can happen. On Chess. Cast that spell, play for free.
What is Hikaru's all-time blitz rating on Chess.com?
At some point, people were getting up to like 3,400, like Ali Reza. I'm gonna go like 3,409, because I think back in the day, everyone was like a bit higher rated, and Ali Reza and Hikaru were around the 3,400 range. I'm gonna go 3,409 just to shot in the dark.
It's 3,405, but really close. When was the first time Fabiano beat you in a classical game?
Okay, let's see. So there's 2011 Vaikonze. I did not lose that game. First time I lost to Fabiano classical game. Think so. It's not 9. Is it Reggio Emilia? That's an interesting question. This is probably wrong, but I'm gonna go with the 2014 Singfield Cup.
I actually think you're exactly correct on that one. Round 5.
Okay.
Which basketball team does Hikaru support?
I have no idea. Mavericks? Probably not. I don't know.
It's Chicago Bulls. How many candidates tournaments has Fabiano played?
Okay, so for Fabiano, it should be pretty easy. It should be 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. So it should be 5 candidates tournaments.
Hikaru published a book in 2009. What was the title?
It was something about Bullet. It was like how to win Bullet. I wouldn't remember the exact title. How to win at Bullet Chess.
Actually, pretty close. It's Bullet Chess 1 Minute to Mate. Has Fabiano ever represented a country besides the US? And if so, which one?
Yeah, so Fabiano represented Italy from about, like, I'm gonna guess, like somewhere around like 2001-ish to till I think 2014, could be wrong, but about 12 or 13 years he represented the country of Italy.
What was Hikaru's peak FIDE rating?
Okay, was it over 2820? I'm like, for some reason, the number that's jumping out is 2819. It could also be somewhere in the low 2820s. For some reason, 2819 is like speaking to me. I'll go with my gut, say 2819.
2816, close. What was Fabiano's peak FIDE rating?
Okay, so Fabiano's peak FIDE rating. Okay, so I believe that it was higher than Kasparov, if I'm not mistaken. Kasparov was 2851, so I think it was 2850. It's either 2853 or 2849. I think is he higher than Gary or not? For some reason in my mind, 53 doesn't sound right. 49 does. 2849, but I wouldn't be shocked if it's the other way around.
We have 2844.
Oh, it's 44, okay. Oh, is that much lower than Gary? Okay. Okay.
We are back with the 3+1 segment, and chat, you are absolutely right. Don't poke the dragon or the dragon will arise. Aman, it's insane. Every time Hikaru Nakamura starts feeling a bit of pressure, as our chat said it, it's like he just shifts gears. Something in him changes. There's this level 2 boss mode that appears.
Yeah, it really feels that way because Hikaru, and look at him now, right? When he's really trusting himself, feeling confident, he's indestructible, but it's almost like he doesn't start the match that way. And it was Le Quang getting those good positions that brought it out of him. He realized he had to compete because the positions were not the best at times. And the problem is, Tanya, you get a good position, you bring that out of him, it doesn't pay off. You don't get a good position, well, he just wins anyway.
You're not only fighting the beast who's sitting in front of you, you're fighting not sitting in front of you in this case, but sitting, on the screen there, but you're also fighting your own mind when these are the outcomes of the games. Because again, let's just touch upon the fact that Liem has had fantastic positions for the majority of the games. He's been the one who's been pushing, but just that 17th piece, the clock, which Hikaru has used magnificently in the match so far, has come to bite him. And now going into this time format, which is less, and we see a Catalan appear for the first time in this match, I think this is a tough ride. 2-point deficit. How does he make a comeback from here, Liem Le?
Yeah, so the other thing I'll say about this time format, 3+1, is that Le Quang Liem actually, his title Tuesday is kind of what brought him here to the SCC, his qualification. And so this time control is very familiar for him because of that, right? So I actually think this could turn out to be one of his better time controls, and it's in line with, the blitz portions, 5 and 3, we were saying he needs to focus on. The problem is Hikaru is one of the best blitz players in the world, so it can be your best format, but you're still playing Hikaru.
Man, I was just about to say, who's the one guy who's won title Tuesday countless number of times, like it's nobody's business? It's your opponent. So yes, you've gotten here through title Tuesday, but the point is you're playing against a speed demon, a speed monster, the best in the business when it comes to this. For Liem, he's going to give it his all. He's got nothing to lose, everything to prove. What do you make of the start of the 3+1 that we have in front of us?
Well, we're back to the Catalan, which is something that we've seen before, especially in previous matches. But Le Quang, as we've talked about, classical player. We saw a position earlier in this match that featured knight h5 takes on f4. Here, a lot different. And just looking at the position, if the move c5 does not happen, we have a position that Hikaru is probably going to be concerned about. If that c-pawn just never seems to appear on the c5 square, watch out. So I think this is what it's all about here. The move c5 in the next couple of moves, Tanya.
And that's why the weird geometrical maneuver by the queen from d8 all the way to a8 by giving a check first. It firstly vacates a nice square for the rook to come to, but also allows that break-free move, the golden move that black aims for in the Catalan with c5.
Yeah, knight b6 right now is holding that move back. But if knight a5 was played, I do think we would see the move c5 appear immediately, because if white plays knight a5 and gets to play knight c6, huge problem for Hikaru's coordination and for all of his pieces. So we're not going to see black allow something like that. However, you also can't play c5 right now because of knight b6. So we're at a little bit of a standstill where both sides are improving pieces, but no one can fully commit to that idea that they want.
Also not easy to play queen a7 because the other knight jumps in with a fork on c6. So you can't really walk out of the threat of knight b6. I wonder if it's time what Hikaru is really setting up is the idea of knight d7, trying to trade off one of the knights to ease some of the pressure. He first blocks the rook on the b line.
Yeah, a5, bishop b4, enjoying the I guess the clamp on the b file. I was also thinking about making space for queen a6 with the move a5, maybe to help that c-pawn advance again. But we're looking at something completely different than expected. This is a very unusual fork, right? You're like hitting the knight, hitting the a-pawn, and Hikaru's trying to solve his problems tactically here.
As he very often does. And now suddenly it's super tricky because he's regained material, but perhaps with interest, because the knight on b4 is hanging, the pawn on d4 was hanging, flurry of moves coming in. Watch out, knight e7 is a big fork right now. White's piece activities makes up for the pawn deficit in the position for Liem.
Yeah, and this pawn chain is actually doing a lot of work here. Notice how this knight really doesn't have anywhere to go. Even knight h5, you can't go to f4. So the knight has nowhere to go. The knight on c6 is actually keeping a lot of the pieces locked up. Like, look at this rook, doomed to passivity. But you're also up a pawn in exchange for all of this. So a little bit of a trade-off here for Hikaru.
And I think he's about to cash in. Go rook takes pawn next, and the other rook about to jump to b7. So Hikaru stops it by attacking the rook on c7. Only one square. Can we potentially see some sort of a repetition in this position with rook b7 and a bit of a back and forth with the knight attacking the rook?
Yeah, I absolutely could. Really depends if Hikaru is interested in that, because what I expect is Hikaru is very curious to learn perhaps how Lekwang Liem is going to handle this time situation. It's a minute up on the clock, and I don't think Hikaru needs to take this draw. There's no big threats that concern me.
I want to just point out that after knight d6, you can't go to d7. There might be tactics with knight takes pawn on the board, which is why he's forced to put the rook on c7. And now, for Hikaru, moment of truth, he's going for more, no draw.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. There's also this sneaky idea that will just get you thinking, if you're Lekwang Liem, about g4. Is g4 a threat? It loosens up the e-pawn, and, well, it's my first thought, pawn to g4, but definitely not necessary. We have other pieces, like, for example, this rook on b8 that we can improve first.
And a good move there by Liem, trying to trade off the rooks that you're talking about if the knights are off the board. And then it'll be white first to that a5 pawn if everything liquidates.
Yeah, you cannot just trade everything here. The rook will come to c5 and take on a5. That's not what Hikaru wants. He's looking for a way to put some pressure on. Of course, he wants to play rook b2, but after the knight trades, does he have better than just a draw?
The question, well, Hikaru, it really looks like he wants to keep as much tension on the board. He's playing on the clock one more time. He's counting on it. And this is how he hedges the risks so well in these format, you know. He knows when he needs to play fast. He keeps all the pieces on the board. And as long as the knights are alive, it's very tricky.
And he's allowing this knight to escape here. But at this point, Hikaru's not always searching for the best move. He's trying to keep the game going. He's trying to get that time under 5 seconds, where at that point, he almost expects a blunder to happen.
And it's happened so many times in this match. So you can understand those expectations right there. And for now, at least, black has an extra pawn. And not so clear how white plans to re-win that.
Yeah, pawn to g4, it's that idea from many, many moves ago. At this point, yes, you can play rook takes e4, but you just have to give thought to rook takes e8 in that position.
And Hikaru quickly moved the knight up, attacked the 2 pawns, and almost felt like a pre-move there. The speed with which the knight blocked the check. He's going to win the g4 pawn, will be up a pawn, and these are pretty tricky, Aman, with the e-pawn becoming a passer.
Exactly. You're up a pawn here as Hikaru, and most importantly, what we've been expecting will be the problem is time. And literally, as I'm saying that, you just see time expire. Like, you at least want to get a move off there. So if Hikaru kind of smells blood, I feel like he goes in for the kill, and he's sensing that Lekwang, when the time is low, is just not as good as he is.
He just flagged him simply, and it almost felt like Hikaru was disappointed by how easy the flagging was there. You know, with his hand up in the air, like that happened really quick. But it was also a very difficult position for Liem, and now we see Hikaru with a 3-point advantage in the match. I have a feeling this is going to be pretty lopsided, Aman.
Yeah, it's certainly trending right now. I think Lekwang now in his second game here in the portion, he really needs to, I think, start out both colors with at least a good game. Looking back at that game, it was honestly not the best. Even though we can sit here and say, well, he kind of held the position, it was pretty good. The time just got too low too quickly. So initially, I like the speed that he's coming in with this game, but I really think we can't see a situation where Lekwang is super satisfied with being equal or maybe being slightly better. If he's down a minute and a half in these games, Tanya, he's going to lose.
He comes to the 20-second territory against Hikaru, he gets flagged. He just cannot let that happen. You know, regardless of what the position evaluation is, Hikaru is just too fast. He's just too tricky putting up those traps. What we have right now, a position quite in control for white. Knight's looking good. A bishop b3 after pawn takes pawn is a threat, so you can't immediately recapture. You'd have to take it with the queen.
Right. Yeah, I wonder if Lekwang was thinking about this move at all. The other idea, is bishop to b6. That's why you put the queen on b8, facilitates this move, and he's kind of shifting the attention over to getting rid of that piece. I do think that, once again, Lekwang, really, really nice position, but Hikaru has given up on trying to make a big effort to get the absolute best position. That's never been his goal when he plays blitz. Like, he's often hunting for the best move, but he doesn't always need it. He just knows the importance of speed and finding a plan.
And I wonder if that's flipped when it comes to Liem, who's trying to play as accurately as possible and perhaps burning the clock in that endeavor to find all the good moves in the position. Because it's been clear that the clock has played a bigger role than what we have on the board. Massive tension there on that left flank with b4. Liem responds with a trade. And now the c6 pawn becomes a bit of a target for white.
Yeah, there's mutual weaknesses here, b4 and c6. Not entirely clear to me which one is a little bit worse. I almost want to play rook b1 because it helps me play rook a6. It would be disappointing to win the c-pawn but lose the b-pawn as well. Then I feel like there's not that much of an advantage for Hikaru. So instead, I think he's going to leave that rook on a4 for as long as he can, and he's stopping c5, which keeps the weaknesses as they are.
So just keeping the tension as he is until Liem falls low on the clock, and we might see a repeat of the story. For now, Liem reroutes his queen to d8, opening up that rook and perhaps rook b5 ideas to defend e5 laterally. Queen coming from the other side as well.
Yeah, queen jumps back to... there is that long-range bishop. The bishop tucked itself on f1, and you almost kind of forget about it for a moment there. But okay, bishop back to c4. We're all taking note of this bishop now.
And queen moves forward, still threatening rook takes pawn. And now that's a real threat with c6 under control. So we see a trade. And I wonder when would the knight jump to f4?
Yeah, you have both sides actually that want to jump their knights into f4 to f5. It's a great square for that piece. However, when you do that, you also relinquish control of the e-pawn. So for black, it's a decision. Every time you do it, you have to watch out for that. And for Hikaru, the knight on e3, if you jump it into f5, I don't see any downside to it as long as e4 is protected. So watch out for those center pawns.
A knight on f5 would also target the d6, e7 square. It just looks like black's rook are slightly worse placed once those knights do land there. Rook c4 really nicely placed there. Like I said, defending that central pawn. Now knight d6 coming into play. That's a bit of a threat. Stopped.
Yeah, and I think knight f5, I mean, it makes sense. You want to stop knight d6, but it also can't be kicked out easily because there is a knight sitting on g6. Whereas for Hikaru, you can play pawn to g3. The absolute best move against a knight on g6, or flip it, g6 against the knight on g3. Same idea. I do expect that we'll see this. It's just a great way to clamp down the position, and there's nowhere that that knight can move, while Hikaru's knight enjoys a great square.
And you could also advance further with h4, h5, really asking big questions to that knight. Is h8 really the square you want to put it on?
Yeah, it might be the square you need to put it on, but I agree. Love the move h4. When you see that knight there, strong players, their pawns will gravitate to g3, h4, and I like the pawn on h5, Tanya, because then maybe knight h4, you can imagine a knight swinging into g6 with devastating effect.
And I don't even know how this happened, but over the last 10 moves, white has completely dominated all of black's pieces, which are on the starting rank of the position. And it just felt like black had his own activity. Suddenly there's a knight on h8, the two rooks, which are looking like they're doing nothing at all. An active move there, attacking the white rook, and the pawn on e4. So it does come in with a threat.
Yeah, and I wonder if knight e7, like maybe he could have underestimated the move knight d6, because it looks to me like Le Quang played a reasonably accurate series of moves there. There wasn't a good answer to knight e7. Instead, it was counterattack with knight d6, so a really nice move.
A lot of times what's happened in this match is Hikaru is just playing, well, the move that asks the most questions. He knows he wants Liem to burn the clock. He knows if it goes into, again, that 20 hyper-bullet segment, hyper-bullet territory, he will be the one who will come on top. He's created the imbalance with the b4 passer, but he doesn't like what's just happened because rook takes pawn is possible here.
Yeah, rook takes b4, e4 is hanging. Now, I think, you know, the training wheels are going to come off, and Hikaru is just, he's got to activate into that speedy mode we see at the end of every game. There's rook c7. Apparently, this is a balanced position, but let's see how it develops here. Knight c7, rook takes b4, 12 seconds to 20.
And it's Hikaru with less time right now, but don't be surprised if that completely changes over the next few moves. A knight from h4 was threatening to jump into f5, stopped now. The white rook attacking all of the 6th rank, tying down the black rook to e8.
Yep. There's a nice idea of knight d6, knight c5 with the threat of his own. So are we going to see the rook stay on the 7th rank? Knight e4. This is just a fork right now. So do you have to take?
He does take. He goes in. We'll see everything traded off. Knight g6. The e4 pawn falls. And again, the position is a draw. But will Hikaru play this out?
Yeah, I think he'll definitely play it. And it's not necessarily because he believes he can win it, but I do think he'll play it on.
He's going to try and advance his king. King d4 would have been met by a check on e6, so that wasn't possible right away.
Yeah, we do see the knight. It's going to have like the g3 square to hit the f-pawn, defend this pawn as well. I don't think there's a realistic attempt here, but I can see what Hikaru's up to. And look, because it's happened so many times, we have to believe it's possible again.
But this time, I think with f4 hanging and eventually the black knight sacrificing, if it's needed for the h5 pawn, the white king to offside, there'll be just no material left. But look at that, Hikaru still finds a way to keep the pawns defended. He's coming back. It's still game on. He has an extra pawn. That's something to play for.
It's absolutely something. And the fact of the matter is he has the extra pawn, and f5 does not work, but knight c5 and knight d3, and Hikaru did it again.
Knight d3.
Hikaru's shaking his head because he knows how good it is what he's doing right now. You can't count it out. Le Quang Liem is losing positions. They're unfathomable for a player at that level to lose, no matter who they're playing. I can't believe what we're witnessing here. It's a true masterclass from Hikaru, but not in maybe the area you might expect. He's showing us how to win positions that are dead drawn against elite players in the world.
You say it's a masterclass, man, but all I feel is that Hikaru Nakamura is the only player in the world who can make this magic happen. It's almost a kind of masterclass where you sit back and watch magic happen. You just enjoy. You just take it in. Because this is what Hikaru just does every time. And it's not luck. He creates these chances on the board. He makes it happen. He makes them appear. From where I don't even think we're on Earth anymore. I mean, this doesn't even feel like reality.
Yeah, there really are no words for that. it's of course skill from Hikaru's side, but at some point skill can only take you so far there, right? Because it is just a draw. So at some point there's nothing that you can do to change the evaluation. You need some help from your opponent, and it comes down to Liem not being perfectly comfortable or confident in these time scrambles. He's just not able to play anywhere close to the level of Hikaru. As soon as you get to a dead equal position, Hikaru's playing it like he's winning.
It's insane. It's absolutely nuts. And I think Hikaru himself, he realizes this, and perhaps that puts him on an even bigger beast mode where he just knows that things are working. He can feel it, the stars are aligning. He takes more chances. He takes more risks. And then regardless of what the position is, he manages to convert it at the end.
And we're back in a position that we've seen before. We have seen this structure. It's a position that I think Lekwang is going to out of comfort. He just had a really nasty loss happen to him that he wants to shake off. So you go back to something that was comfortable. The last time that we saw this, it was a position where he actually did have a win in the waning moments of that game. I think maybe Rook A2 to try to take the A file here. Is he thinking about Knight C6?
It almost felt like Liem was setting that up. He goes with your plan. Aman there, Rook A2 trying to trade the heavy pieces off, forcing Hikaru to give up his bishop, but this would improve Liem's pawn structure. He could go pawn takes bishop with the F pawn.
Yeah, I'm almost wondering if
you want to take with the D pawn, Knight D2, Knight D4.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this because of Knight D4, but I'm also thinking about it because, Tanya, I'm looking at the match score, and I just feel I want to imbalance things a little bit more. But, it's not to say this is a great move, an easy protected pass pawn for Hikaru. I don't think he's going to be too concerned, but I can understand why Lekwang did that.
And the more I see it once it appears, the more I like it. Well, match situation, one thing, but also generally, I think it's a winning approach, right? You trade the rooks off, you put your knight on D4, and you feel like that's why you can try to at least dominate the position. Hikaru immediately trying to break free. You take that pawn, you lose a key central pawn.
Yeah, white almost wants to take and then play F4 to keep the E pawn. You can't do everything at once. Would love to trade maybe the F2 pawn for G5. But here, if you play King F3 and take with the king, that's one indication. But it takes a while for this knight to reach that desirable D4 square.
But I wonder if after King F3, he just keeps the tension and marches up with his own king, perhaps. Maybe both sides are going to end up keeping the tension because neither wants to blink in this position. Black doesn't want to take on F4. White doesn't want to take on G5.
Yep. King F3 makes sense to start. And, okay, Black will play the move F6, like it will happen here. Maybe King G7 and then F6. He decides to start with it. No big difference, I think. King G5, you can, of course, take with the knight here. So E5 is going to happen.
And he's rerouting his knight to A5 to get to the C6 pawn.
Yeah, the king needs to go to D7 if you want to free this knight. And I wonder, does he have time? King D7, if you play G5, then maybe you go back to E6 and say, wait a minute, that G pawn's a little extended. And if you don't, play F3, knight A6, suddenly the B pawn is dropping, and that gets concerning.
And then it all comes down to being a race, right? The G pawn trying to deflect the black king away. Will it be in time to do just that? They often say that the knight and pawn endings are a lot like king and pawn endgames. They can be played with those dynamics. So white currently has the outside passer, the G pawn, right? Which is rolling up. And I wonder if that perhaps could give Liem a little bit of a chance in this endgame. Because, man, all he needs is one win to get that confidence back.
Yeah, that's definitely right. What we're going to see here is Hikaru applying even more pressure in a supposedly equal position. And the reason is that after King D4, the king will go to F5 and you're a little bit in Zugzwang. Not actually, but the idea is that the knights are both hitting the C pawn. And if the white knight moves, then black's knight is free to move as well.
Well, maybe you try to start with king to D3 and try and be a little clever about it. So that when black goes king F5, you put your king on D4 and say, you know what? Now it's your move. It's black to play. So I can keep my knight on F5.
Yeah, very clever. I feel like after that, the question is like, are you too clever or are you just clever enough? And I think I like it. With 28 seconds, He's working through everything, decides king d4, knight b7 is fine. Let's see how his calculation is.
And is Hikaru about to head for the b4 pawn now that the knight is free? He does it. Knight takes pawn. The king will attack the knight. The c6 pawn about to fall next.
Yep. And I think there's really nothing tricky that can happen here. Knight c1, trying to get to d3, and then maybe e5, right? Knight c1, king b4 would be a terrible, terrible move.
You'd have to fall back with your king to c2, keep chasing the knight, not allowing it to fall back to d3 for the ideas that you mentioned there. And again, you know, this is Liem. He's trying to play for more. He could have gone knight d4, simplified the position, but he wants to get his king to the b5 pawn.
Yeah, I think at this point it's definitely trending towards a draw. Both sides are incentivized to give up material. And yes, this will end in a peaceful result here after c7. 7-3 is the score as we jump into the next game here. Looking like all Hikaru, but you know, Lekwang is just, he's hanging within reach here.
And very importantly, he stopped the bleeding, right? Because Hikaru, he just goes on these runs, on these hot streaks. He's the master of momentum management. He knows when he feels his opponent's weakness, and then he pounces on it. So I think stopping the bleeding, also keep it at some point. He needs to start winning. Liem does.
Yeah, we see an opening here, which definitely the players are going to be ultra familiar with. But again, it comes from that opening that we saw right in game one of the match, the Trumpovsky. Bishop g5, taking on f6. And I do think we'll see, I guess, a long castle idea now that I've seen queen f3 on the board.
It's very inviting because you put pressure on the d5 pawn as well right after that, not allowing black to finish development. Very tricky position, and it's sort of easier to get into these tricky openings when you're the one with a 4-point advantage in the match.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Bishop takes c5. I expect castling, although it makes me wonder about the move d4. I was expecting maybe bishop takes c5 first. Perhaps we'll just transpose.
He castles anyway, the queen is pinned, and the best move was queen a5 to unpin. Instead, he takes the pawn. Is it time to jump in with the knight to e4 idea I was saying, but bishop b5 the best move?
Yeah,
And
best
of course,
move in
Hikaru plays
play. Yeah, exactly. Hikaru understands that this is the moment to seize. There is a pin on the d file. There's a pin from the bishop. Castling, by the way, Tanya, is barely even safe, right? You're not going to castle kingside and feel great about your decision. So it's not like you're just castling to safety here. No, it's difficult. Your king's not safe in the middle. It's not safe on the king side. You have pins everywhere. I mean, what do you even play here?
When you're playing against Hikaru, the king isn't safe anywhere. I mean, you castle on the king side, h-pawn starts moving up the board. You're already looking at all ideas what setup mate with potential rook lifts, h4, h5, h6. And like you said, king on e8, how long can you live there for? And you really even have time to go long castle. Maybe he's setting that up with the move queen b6.
Interesting. Yeah. Queen b6 hits the bishop, but again, taking is well timed because there's no knight takes on d4, and I think that was something he was expecting.
But this apparently is not the right way to recapture. Is it time to go knight e2, develop, hit that bishop on d4?
Yeah, I wondered about knight e2 first, but I think just the fact that the bishop gets undermined here is what brings you to knight e2, when the reality is queen takes f6, threatening the rook with check, preventing castling. You can follow with knight e2 afterwards. So knight e2 is the right idea, but take that pawn first while you can.
And I think had he done it before, Liem would have happily gone long castle in that position, the rook defending the bishop on d4 as well. So Hikaru, on top of things, he takes that f6 pawn, and now the king is truly stuck at the center. All the ideas of knight takes bishop as well. You could go rook f1, hit that bishop again.
Yeah, I really like that idea. I was also looking at knight e4. Now, there's a queen e3 check that can happen, so I'm not so sure about that, but I'm looking at anything and everything involving a knight d6 or a knight c7 check where the queen cannot take this bishop.
Sneaky stuff here, knight d5. If bishop takes knight, rook takes bishop would threaten the e5 pawn, apart from also defending its own bishop on b5. Hikaru on top of everything right now. This is a full board press by him.
Yeah, not to mention Queen E7 checkmate is threatened. So,
Oh my goodness.
yeah, just go ahead and mention that one. It's easy to miss in the melee that we're looking at here. But yes, Queen E7 was actually a checkmate threat.
I completely missed that one. It would have been a mate in one if I was playing this position with the black pieces. So many ideas, and now the F2 bishop is left hanging. Sure, you can take the knight on D5, but the bishop's going to be pinned there. Could you just win the piece? Queen takes bishop, queen C5.
Agree. It looks like maybe Le Quang's trying to bail himself out with a queen G5 check to unpin, but I imagine tactically there's just no way that actually works. However, it does need to be worked out, and I'm assuming that Hikaru is, realizing king B1, there's nothing you can do now to unpin.
He's such a cool customer. He simply sidesteps that check that you mentioned, the defensive resource, and now the bishop on D5. Eternal pin against the queen. You're not going to save this one. The E5 pawn is hanging, and that's it. Liem resigns.
And he resigns in 17 moves. I will say, I think that was the first game that we have seen this match where it was just a complete crush. And with how good Hikaru is, you expect that some of these are going to happen, but honestly, they hadn't happened yet, which is a credit to how well Le Quang Liem has been playing. Tanya, you can see what happens if Le Quang has a bad game. If he has a bad opening, Hikaru pounces with an easy victory.
It's insane. And in the 5+1, we saw Liem have such great positions out of the opening, but suddenly there's a turnaround, and you can tell the reason for that is they're just simply fighting that psychological battle with everything that's happening. Hikaru just seems like he's winning every single kind of position in this match. A 5-point deficit, that's massive amount.
It is. It's 8-3 right now for Hikaru Nakamura. We're at the midway point, but Le Quang hasn't been able to put a win on the board in the 3-minute segment here. It's only going to get worse in the bullet. So the match is kind of starting to escape unless we see a really strong finish to this 3-minute portion from Le Quang after the break.
And it's clear how much this SCC means to Hikaru Nakamura. The first one where he didn't make it to the finals was last year in Paris. He's making a statement start to his campaign against Le Quang Liem right now with that 8-3 score. And we'll continue with the 3+1 segment after this break. Hikaru's really stepping it up, and you can level up your chess game with Neuro. Energy and focus products have got you covered with natural caffeine and vitamins for when you need to lock in. Or reduce your stress and stay centered with calm and clarity. And after a long day, make sure you wake up refreshed with Sleep and Recharge Melt Away Mints, because good energy is your best opening. Whether you need more energy, more calm, or more rest days, stay sharp with Neuro. You can save 15% with code CHESS15 at go.chess.com/Neuro. And we will be right back, Aman, with the 3+1 section on the other side of this break. Chat, don't go anywhere.
Another pep talk? Nah, you're past that. Hype fades, but good energy, that stays. Workout, workday, whatever. We're here for it all damn day. It's never just one thing. Be ready for everything. Mind sharp, focus locked. Don't just move forward. We've got good energy. Neuro Gum and Mints.
Welcome to the Esports World Cup. They are not just fighting for money. They're not just fighting for fame, but something that is far more valuable, and that is legacy.
To become best in the world at anything, to be within that top 1%, you have to show dedication, desire, determination. You've got to be resilient, ruthless, and ready for anything.
Have you ever wished you could just play game after game against a coach who actually teaches you stuff? Imagine a coach that plays at your level, tailors challenges for you, and even gives you feedback while you play. Well, buckle up, because that's exactly what we built. Introducing Play Coach on Chess.com. You can now literally play a full-on game against Coach, who talks to you, points out threats, praises your genius bishop moves, and gently roasts you for missing that fork that's been there for more than 5 moves. Here's how it works. Go to chess.com/play/coach, or just hit up Play Coach in the app. Pick your color, choose the difficulty, and boom, you're in. You can even customize your coach. Don't like their vibe? Change it up. Choose a new coach. Want more or less help? Toggle move suggestions. Turn on or off threat arrows. The eval bar. You are in control. Coach will break down your play as you go. We're talking real-time feedback here. Strategic tips, motivation, compliments when you crush it, hints when you need them, all of it targeted exactly at your level. Total beginner? Coach will teach you opening principles, basic tactics, and king safety. More advanced? Then Coach will give you tips on pawn structure, positional ideas, the works. So stop wasting time. Go to chess.com/play/coach, fire up a game, and actually start getting better. Coach is waiting for you on the board, and I'll see you around on chess.com.
A 5-point lead for Hikaru Nakamura going into the second half of the 3+1 segment. Hikaru currently crushing it, getting his energy there on the camera, munching on, I think that was a burrito there, Aman. He's enjoying the food, he's enjoying the match. For Liem, it's just getting more and more daunting.
Yeah, it really doesn't get any easier. He has that look on his face like he knows it. He knows that the job in Bullet is going to be next to impossible, but 3+1 is a familiar time format for Liem. I do expect him to score better than he has. I think, being at 0.5, bit disappointing, but I will say the positions that he had in 5-minute chess were a lot better than what he's got in 3 minutes. Hikaru has leveled up a little bit, and he's playing into the match.
Now we have a Catalan. Before we deep dive, quick question, Aman. Are you a burrito fan?
Burrito fan? I would say no. I feel like I would have to really be on the yes side to say yes. And so if I'm even indifferent, I feel like I have to say no to that. Yeah, not a burrito guy.
All right, well, you might not be agreeing with Hikaru's choice of food, but I think with the form that he's showing and everything that he's been bringing on the board, it's been super impressive. Aman, now we've got a Catalan by Liem. Sacrifice that c-pawn temporarily, which can be picked up by the queen or the knight on the next move. Hikaru, meanwhile, attacks the bishop, and it's a position that we have seen before.
Yeah, a lot of the time you see knight takes c4, and then actually black takes the time to play the move a5, and it's a bit of a choice. White can play where you play knight e5 and, trade the pieces, and black plays, maybe c6. Or you can try your best to avoid that exchange, but it's so difficult. It's like black wants to trade these bishops. You want to avoid it, but it's not clear how. So knight e5 is very common.
And for now, Hikaru just stops the advance of the a-pawn. He controls that b4 square where we often see the bishop landing. The light square, the Catalan bishop, the Gem and Gloria White's position, successfully traded off, but there's still a lot to play for White in these positions. The two knights do a beautiful job of clamping down. There's more central control, more space for Liem.
Yeah, the move f3 is definitely going to be regarded by the computer as subpar. I can understand why, but it's understandable. This f3 e4 pawn structure against a knight is really, really good. But for Hikaru, he's not playing a position because he's hunting for a big advantage or he's trying to equalize entirely. He's going to put this bishop on b4, and he's just so solid with this pawn structure. He's stopping d5. What can you really do as Lekwang is the question that he's going to be asking. Of course, there's a lot of maneuvering to be done, but Hikaru's in a position in the match where he can just say, all right, do your worst.
And I think for Liem right now, it's just all about improving his pieces, maybe get the rook to c1, put the queen on either b3, and then even perhaps think about the pawn storm on that right flank with g4 coming in at some point. Hikaru goes for the thematic idea of getting rid of one of the knights. Knight d3 would keep the tension.
Yeah, knight d3 dropping back, just keeping pieces on the board. Same idea with knight g4, a little bit more unusual. And of course, it always invites the idea of knight to f6, knight to b6, kind of the same thing. Hikaru is basically scaring away all these knights with knight d7, knight b6, because Lekwang is trying to avoid an exchange.
And also making his intentions clear further, he wants to put the rook on d8, double up on the d pawn. Liem will do exactly the same to defend that pawn, rook d1 to follow.
Yeah, the d pawn needs protection. The knight on g4 is not doing that much because it doesn't have any support. If this h pawn gets up there, there's a world where the knight does a lot on the king side, but you can see the rest of white's pieces are not really helping out. However, h5 kicking the knight away, you're probably not too unhappy if you're Lekwang, because I was just saying I don't really know what the knight's doing there.
And that's the thing, right? When you have this multi-point cushion with an 8-3 lead, you start taking these extra risks on the board because you've got that margin to play for wins, to take that high-risk, high-reward approach.
And there we go. There's a decision, right? Something committal in the position, pawn to e5. It was clear Hikaru was going to play bishop to g7. The d-pawn would be a big target. Now look at this square that you give up on d5, but Lekwang is saying, look at these squares that I just earned in the position as well.
And I'm surprised that the eval bar doesn't give more of an advantage because of those juicy squares where the knight is absolutely ready to jump into. Meanwhile, black's bishop, it just looks like it's staring against a wall right now, which has just been reinforced. Knight c5 in the air, knight d6 in the air, h3, g4.
Yeah, I'm actually a little bit surprised that we didn't see g4 on the previous turn. f4 is great to support the e-pawn, but maybe it didn't need it, and it could have just started with g4 supported by the f-pawn. Nonetheless, same idea happening here. Lekwang Liem is in a really good spot. You have a couple attacking options. You can play pawn to g5, but hang on. Pawn to g5, I'm almost worried about trapping my queen here.
And he does it. Where is Hikaru's queen running? All he needs to do is knight d2, knight f3. Isn't that just... And he's going for it? I don't see a way out.
And Hikaru was counting on knight f6, thinking, oh, maybe I'm going to lose the rook, but no, losing the queen after queen h4, and Hikaru does it to himself. Lekwang gets his first win in the 3-minute portion.
And a super important one. If there's any comeback to be staged, Liem needed to win that. And he found his opportunity and went for it. Hikaru doesn't want to waste any time on the match clock, immediately resigns, and goes for the next game. Now it's a 4-point deficit.
And we see a position here that I think actually just favors black ever so slightly, especially I want to say with this a4 move. So I am surprised that he allowed this, but I've seen these positions in the hands of a strong player. Sometimes you actually voluntarily move your king and then hide it on c2, which is why I found it so weird that he allowed a4, because now I don't see any advantage to not being able to castle here, Tanya. You're not hiding the king on c2, and you're just back in the center, but you can't castle.
And it's sort of like that same narrative from the start of the match, right? Where out of the opening, Hikaru seems like he's taking far too many risks and sort of getting into these less than ideal positions, regardless of what color he's playing with, but then he starts playing on Liem's clock. So right now in endgame, a lot of shuffling around with the king, trying to finish his development.
Yeah, if knight f3, we'll definitely see pawn to f6. In general, trading the dark squared bishops is actually something that Lekwang wants to do. So Hikaru's mainly doing this because the position's not great for him, and he's just trying to exchange pieces.
And he develops his knight. Liem at some point could push the f pawn to f6 just to free up his own knight on d7 from the defense of e5.
Yep. Stops knight g5, defends the e-pawn. There is everything good about Lekwang Liem's position here. Just beautiful so far. And Hikaru he's pretty far behind. Like the a-pawn, b-pawn are being pushed, gaining space over there. This is a great start.
And the reason you say that is that despite there's a symmetrical pawn structure, it's because of what's going on the left flank, on the queen side, with Liem's pawns gaining so much space and really clamping down on white's forces there. Bishop to d3. What is... I don't even think Hikaru has the answer to that. He's just low on the clock here.
Yeah, rook to a7 played. And I think this is an idea to move over to d7 from a7. So hopeful that the bishops will exchange. Maybe the rook slides over this way. This is looking like just a position that's slowly improving, just bit by bit. And when the rooks double on the d file, Tanya, you do not want to have these pieces sitting there.
And then you're questioning, why did I play the move bishop to d3 once more? What is it even doing there? But Hikaru, he now goes into a bit of a thing trying to understand or figure out how does he free all these space problems that he's having. You know, f4 as a break, I think that just walks into black's plan, giving away the e5 square.
Yeah, that would be very nice in general for Lekwang if Hikaru were to play that way. There's also the fact that the a2 pawn is hanging. You're constantly looking at a position where you'd love to just join the middle and challenge the d file. But remember, even a position where you just challenge the d file, all the rooks exchange, you could just lose an a pawn at the end of all these variations. And if you play a3, oh my goodness, the squares are just so weak there, Tanya.
With all the holes that would be created with that move, that would not be a happy one. Right now, he reroutes the knight, preempting bishop takes bishop to take that square with his own knight. And once the knight jumps to c5, perhaps just fall back with the bishop. I think this is the kind of position, Aman, you just stay. You say, yes, I've ended up in a worse endgame, but is there really something that you can make out of it? And what is the winning plan here?
Yeah, I was wondering what plan he was going to go for. Now, one of them is to play f5 with the idea that if you control the f4 square, you know, maybe you can kick the knight out, but also understanding that there was a possibility once the knight gets there, you just want to control the squares that it can go to.
And that's the thing, once you've maximized piece placement, you have to start looking for those ideal pawn breaks, whether it'll come with b4 at some point or f5. But then that also comes with its own set of risks, especially when you're playing against a guy like Hikaru, because you have to be careful of the pawns you leave behind. Bishop c4, a check, a big idea here.
Bit of a surprising move, f5. I don't understand allowing bishop to g5 here. This seems like it could only favor Hikaru, whose pieces now all suddenly look amazing. So the move f5, I'm just going to go and say, I mean, I guess it's a mistake. I almost want to call it a blunder, just because it lets Hikaru back into the game fully. And I was looking at a move like bishop c4, did not like Hikaru's position.
Bishop c4, well, you have one retreating square for the king, and that's enough. And now the thing is that after you take, you've got knight g3 as well, attacking not one, but two pawns on the board. So very surprised with this hasty decision to rush with f5 when it could have been just kept as a threat. Hikaru doesn't go for bishop takes bishop.
Yeah, I would have expected it. Even if you don't take it, you know, I understand the move rook c1. It's safer because if he now can play the move knight to g3, you just take control of the e4 square and you feel like nothing bad can happen. You're willing to give up the bishop for the knight and just plant a piece on e4 and be ultra solid. So in some ways I understand this, and wow, that's going to be snapped off immediately with knight e4. That was I think a pretty bad transition for Lekwang. I don't like this.
Not at all. It feels like we've headed into a classical good knight versus bad bishop endgame where the bishop's sort of struggling to get. Meanwhile, the knight on for eternity right now, and Hikaru setting up some pawn breaks, looking for them. Look at that. Rook c1, rook b1, rook a1. That's just him getting Liem low on the clock before he goes b4.
Exactly. Rook c1 followed by c4 is also happening. We're slowly going to be building up to the c4 pawn push. If that happens, then we're going to see Hikaru get the counterplay he's looking for.
And he does it instantly, as you mentioned it. It's on the board, Aman. That great call. Liem now down to his second. Rook d4 played. Hikaru's playing for the offense. He takes the file, but no infiltration squares yet.
Yeah, so he's just going to wait around. He's wondering maybe if the bishop will move and give up a square that he can make use of. You can always trade, but at this point, because of the pawns over here, I'm wondering if that's the smartest decision. Knight c3 will get him the e4 square. This is huge.
And Black King is just tied down to that left flank defending pawns, while White King has a free hand to get into the game. And this is counterplay being set up by Liem.
Yeah, do not underestimate that bishop. Even though Hikaru has a nice position here, you have to watch out for bishop c1. And I think the defense, it was going to be maybe knight b1 against it, but no, now he doesn't have to. The knight makes it to c2. And what? He hangs the bishop.
My goodness.
He just hung the bishop there.
Bishop d2 was a mouse slip by Liam. I don't know if it was headed towards c1, but he played on d2, and yeah, just unbelievable. It's crazy. Just bishop c1, it's game over then. But also he had knight b1, so I think that endgame is still very difficult for Black to control.
Yeah, we basically saw all phases of the game right there, and yet again, it culminates with the expected result, right? Hikaru Nakamura gets it done one way or another, yet again, in a position that did not look like much.
Now we wait for Hikaru's swindle was our featured chat while that game was ending, and that somehow just happened, you know? It's exactly what we saw at the end. Knight e2, he sets it up, and bishop c1, game over, and once again 9-4. And we've got this position, also very familiar territory.
Oh yeah, we're gonna see this quite a lot, I think. It's already made a number of appearances. For Lekwang, I mean, the good thing about this is that he knows the position. He knows where the pieces go. He just won Hikaru's queen here, so it's understandable to repeat. Tanya, it's a match that hasn't gone his way, so honestly, I would repeat the few things that have been the bright spot.
And the thing is, there have been a lot of bright spots, but it's all become darkness at the very end of every game. And once again, I want to take us back to that 5+1 game 2, which just now feels like the start to the end, because we've seen that narrative play out throughout the match, Aman. Well, Liam's doing really well, and at the very end, somehow, Hikaru Nakamura always wins. What was that? All roads lead to something like that.
Yeah, something like that. There are some assurances in life, and Hikaru winning equal positions or even dead loss positions always seems to make a reappearance. Rook d6 in this position, holding on to the c-pawn, easy move to miss. I was also thinking that pawn to d5 was a nice achievement for Lekwang, and I expected maybe a weak pawn structure, but I don't even think we're getting that.
I'm quite liking what Liam's done in this game so far. Not the first time we've said that in this match. And he trades on c6. Further trades, I think there are going to be some weaknesses because you have to be careful capturing on the c6 pawn with your queen. He doesn't even allow that by recapturing with the knight.
Yeah, takes on d1 first. And the knight will, I mean, in the future, probably not just now, but it will make it to the c4 square. And I think this is reinforcing the idea that an endgame would be very welcomed for Lekwang. If you imagine the queens disappear, knight c4, I think that's a position that Lekwang will be looking to get.
I just keep looking at the move knight e5, and I know the computer would not allow anyone to make it, and that's just so annoying because that's where you want that f3 knight. But hey, it's pinned to the white king. So for now, that under control, and Hikaru nicely centralizes his own queen.
Yeah, queen e4, keeping this pin. You can unpin yourself. I'm also looking at the move queen to c2, maybe trying to trade. Like I'm only looking at ways to trade the queen here because it looks like that bishop is not going to be an effective piece in an endgame.
I wouldn't be surprised after queen c2, Hikaru just decides to keep the queens on the board. So maybe Liam is trying to look for some other more active alternatives. Well, he does go for your idea of queen c2. Now, big moment. Does Hikaru trade? I think the endgame should be good for white there. Better formation.
It's not losing, so he might do it, but truthfully, that's what Lekwang wants. So there is an element of chess that Hikaru is maybe most familiar with, where you don't want to give your opponent what you know they want.
So let's see what Hikaru's mindset here is. He wants to keep the queens on the board. And again, that could be a match situation fueled decision here. You know, he has so many points that he just wants to keep the game going.
Yep. queen d3, just keeping an eye on everything. If this knight moves, I think we're going to see queen d5. So the knight needs to watch over this square. Queen d5 takes full control of the position and of that long diagonal. So you see Hikaru just hanging on. He's guarding the check and he's keeping the pin.
You still have to find moves. With the queen stuck there, the bishop on b4 not having so many green pastures, the knight on f6, I don't find better squares for it. And now finally, Liem activates his own knight on f3 by unpinning it. It feels like white has made a lot of progress in the last few moves.
Yeah, there's also queen to f3 as an idea. Again, looking for that queen trade. So I do agree there's been a lot of progress. If you're looking at bishop on b4, Tanya, it is looking like a spectator, right? There is nothing that bishop has done or you can imagine that it will do in this game.
And that queen from f3, it's eyeing the b7 square as well to get into Hikaru's camp from.
I wonder if it's time to bring the knight in. I suggest it as like almost a way to bring that bishop back into the action, but still, an exchange of knights or an exchange of queens will be really welcomed for Lekwang. So let's see what he decides to do. As actually, computer is saying knight takes b4. It would win the a pawn, or you'd have to take this way and allow a pass pawn. But Tanya, you can see the human element of just never wanting to touch that bishop.
Because it's just been such a bad piece for the whole game. But that was the moment you had to cash in on that. And counter-intuitively, it was with a trade. So a tough one to make. But still, Liem keeps some pressure, keeps the advantage going. But knight d3, knight takes bishop. It was, and maybe he's setting it up now again. You know, he's rerouting it. And is he going to do it this time? I think he does it this time.
Let's see. It's time ticking down may actually contribute to him playing it because you start to trust your instincts a little bit more. But no, he's pretty resolved now that he's not going to do it. I was wondering about queen d7 as a way to trade, but finally, this bishop makes an appearance, Tanya.
After a long time, makes a move and forces the knight back. Well, not forces. I think there was a better move, queen c6 or queen d7, offering the queen trade. And the bishop on d4, a much happier piece than on b4. And if you trade now, you've got to pass up.
Hikaru knows exactly what white wants. That's the advantage that he's had this entire position. I mean, queen e4, queen e2. Oh my goodness, there's a lot of moves that look dangerous here. Knight f4. He finds the best move in the position, Tanya. A brilliancy duly awarded to this sacrifice with queen g4 to follow. Oh my goodness.
And it's a beautiful one. It just finishes the game off. King takes bishop, queen e2 would have landed in checkmate. You can't take the knight. Hikaru spotted knight f4. He played it and he gets the dub.
Just a beautiful finish there. Knight f4. It's like how many moments in that game did Hikaru have where he could play for an advantage? When was he better? When did he have a tactic available? And the answer is in that exact moment. And that's it. White was better the whole game, on the light squares the whole game, felt like executing that concept of the bishop being a spectator. And then I think I offended the bishop because it played bishop c3, bishop d4, and delivered the fatal blow, bishop takes f2.
And that's almost poetic, right? Aman, the worst placed piece for the whole game is the one that makes the final move, which forces resignation. It makes the winning move. It's insane how Hikaru finds ways of doing that.
And we're back into a, once again, familiar position. Lekwang is happy to repeat most of these openings, but also Hikaru has found the openings that he likes against Lekwang. Notice how we haven't seen the Trompowsky as much, right? He's swapped to this e4 system and he likes it a little bit more, so he's going to stick with it.
And the head bob makes a reappearance as well as the bishops go off the board. And now Hikaru trying to break the center. Once again, knight on e4. It can be kicked out with a move like f5, but that just creates so many weaknesses. It leaves the e5 pawn weak. Ideas of the knight jump with the rook combined on that file. You have to be really careful before committing to f5.
Exactly right. Rook d8. We see, of course, you want to occupy the open lines, but you also need this rook on a8 to defend the a pawn. Pawn on a4 does need support. In general, I mean, the chances are about equal here because the bishop can be a very strong piece, especially on this diagonal in the future. But for now, most of Black's pieces are just defending the pawn in the center.
And Hikaru does the same thing. He plays c3 to break d4. Now he plays d4 to break e5. If you take pawn takes pawn, you have to be careful about all kinds of knight jumps on the board with the rook lined up against the queen. And I see a bar. It seems to favor Liem's position, but I think there are a lot of practical problems to deal with in this position.
I agree. The rook looking at the queen on the e-file is exactly why Le Quang moved away, and apparently moving away gave back a lot of the advantage that Black had in that position. So really counterintuitive. In the end, there are going to be some weaknesses here in Hikaru's position in terms of the pawns, but look, he's basically looking to have the game be very, very dynamic, leaving all the pieces on the board. There could have been a queen exchange, an exchange of knights, but instead we see every square in the center is occupied.
Usually by pawns, but this time by 3 knights and a queen. So we're at a fascinating position. White's also setting up, putting his own queen on more active pastures, landing up on h5. Well, for now, that has been stopped with knight c4. I like this move, man, because it also clears up a square. Knight f6 is a big threat. Watch out. But I was thinking, yes, ideas like bishop e5 come into play. Beautiful defender, and it's a mistake.
Yeah, it looks like bishop e5 is the obvious move, stopping knight f6, which is possible because of the pin, and rook d1. I mean, can't really blame Hikaru here, setting up potential knight f5s and wants to recapture on d4 with the rook, but apparently that was a miss. Now he needs to play knight f5, and can you even resist this move, Tanya?
It's screaming to be on the board. It's just so tempting to play knight f5. Usually blue arrow moves are hard to find, but I think this one's hard to miss.
Yeah, I really wonder what else he could be considering here, and it looks like knight e6 is the answer. Fancy move here with queen e6, and queen drops back to take on c4. Wow.
Very flashy stuff. But knight e6 doesn't threaten anything, right? You could trade the rook. The g7 pawn is still defended, so you're not forced to capture that knight on e6.
No, not at all. And I think that just is why knight f5 is better, because if you don't capture this knight, then knight f5 is the square I'd rather have it on. Pawn to h5 from Le Quang. He's trying to distract the queen, but Hikaru does have a move here that gives him an advantage.
But could it be to place the queen on f5 to try and... Queen f5 walks into bishop h2. That's how I would lose this position on the spot.
Oh my goodness. Wow, great blunder and then tactic, Tanya.
All right, he comes back, Aman, and he puts pressure on that knight on c4. I think the only move that keeps the game going, again, one of those forcing moves where you know you're not losing material immediately.
Yeah, and we're starting to see basically the difference between Hikaru and most of his opponents. When you're calculating these lines, Hikaru's up almost a minute. They're both calculating the same lines. Le Quang's finding some good moves, but look how quickly, 5 seconds, Hikaru processes this brilliancy, leaving the knight hanging, returning to h5 with rook d7 in the position as well. This is a massive checkmate attack with 20 seconds. I don't know if he can defend.
I think the answer is a no. And he couldn't take the pawn earlier before jumping knight g5 because of the same tactic of bishop h2. So knight g5 was precise, and now he's threatening all kinds of checkmates on the board. He does repeat once. He's not going to repeat twice, even though Hikaru could do that, giving the match situation, but he definitely wants more.
Yeah, rook
and he
d7.
does it, he's going for checkmate.
Beautiful tactic. This was featured in a previous SCC matchup as well. I was going to say rook f7 with queen g8, but rook b7, exact same idea. Really nice, nicely executed checkmate attack there.
And notice how all of Liem's piece, not a single check possible. The knight, queen, and rook completely offside from the black king, which has been forced into the center of the board, the starting position, and Liem resigns.
Yeah, that was brilliancy after brilliancy. Thinking back also to last game as well, which ended with a double brilliancy. Hikaru is kind of on a brilliancy streak here. He's not only collecting the wins, he's doing it in a flashy style as well, Tanya.
This was actually a very beautiful game. You know, knight e6, it wasn't the most precise move, but again, it forced Liem into these complications and he just did not have enough time. And then finishing it off in style by eventually sacrificing that piece and just, well, almost one move away from delivering checkmate.
And the score is, I believe, ticked up from that. So 11-4 with that last really nice win there. Hikaru is really on fire as the 3+1 portion, Tanya, comes to a conclusion, and it means that we've got Bullet coming up with an 11-4 score. I think we were talking about how you kind of want to do better early, right? So we haven't quite done that. I will say politely that Lekwang has an uphill battle in the bullet portion.
We're going into Hikaru territory with what's coming up on the other side of the break as we go into that final segment. It's going to be 1+1. It's going to be something to watch Hikaru Nakamura. He's already got a big lead in the match. But can Liem try to, or at least get some wins in? We find out.
What's up, everybody? I'm here on behalf of one of our newest partners, Neuro. You may have known them before as Neuro Gum, but they make more than just gum now, even though this is the stuff that I actually personally really love and have been using for a hot minute. Natural caffeine, B vitamins, theanine, stuff that is good for you when you're looking to avoid that second cup of coffee. Now they also have Neuro Mints for calm and clarity. Also only natural ingredients. They use GABA, vitamin D, all kinds of good stuff that you like putting in your body if you're looking for natural ways to bring up your energy and maybe calm down and get that clarity you need. Toward the end of the day, there's sleep and recharge. There's all kinds of small mint packets. But like I said, I really do love the Energy and Focus Gum. I use it in the afternoon. Pop one. Sometimes I really need that extra energy. Either way, hope you give them a chance. Use the command Neuro if you happen to be watching this during one of our shows. Otherwise, go to neurogum.com. Check them out today on behalf of Chess, and we'll see you around on Chess.com.
Grandmaster Hikaru Nakamura, the chess pieces are set up. You don't have a physical opponent. You're going to play Chat GPT today. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm curious to see how far it can go into the game before it makes an illegal move or does something that violates the rules of chess. Certainly, I hope in the future we'll be able to play a complete game, but let's see how it goes.
Okay, now you've been playing chess for a lot longer than Chat GPT's been around. So if you don't mind, we're going to have you play blindfold. Are you cool with that?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay, we gave you a spinny chair.
Yeah, I'll spin it around. Okay. That's fine, yeah.
Excellent. We'll obviously make your moves for you.
Sure.
And Hikaru, what's your first move?
I'll play E4.
Okay. ChatGPT is generally positive, and E5 is the response.
Let's go Bishop C4.
Okay, it's already announcing the Italian game. I think it jumped the gun. I'm going to call it the Bishop's opening. Knight F6 is the response.
Okay, I will play pawn to D4.
I think you might have made a video about this on your channel, the game you played when you were a kid like this. E takes D4 is the response.
Okay, I'll play pawn to E5.
Okay, it understands that its knight's attacked. Oh boy, already, knight D5 is the response.
Okay, bishop takes D5.
Not showing us much right now. I'll respond C6, attacking your bishop. Its words, not mine.
Okay, bishop to B3.
Okay, I'll play D5, striking at the center.
Okay, en passant, E takes D6.
Oh boy, let's see what happens. Now, the big question, do I type in the words en passant? I'm gonna type in E takes D6 as one likely would on the notation. It accepted it. It understands en passant. Bishop takes D6 is the response.
Okay, let's go knight to F3.
Okay, knight F3 on the board. Castles is the response.
Okay, castles.
Okay. Solid choice. Its words, not mine. Bishop G4. Okay. And for once, it understood this is actually a pin. It got that one right for once.
Okay, I'll play queen to D3.
Queen D3, fair enough. Supporting your center and preparing pressure. Again, its words. Knight to D7 is the response.
Okay, queen takes D4.
Okay. Bishop takes F3.
Okay, queen takes D6.
Chat GPT. Ooh, it liked bishop takes F3 so much, it played it again. I mean, why not? Okay. The bishop stands up, goes right back down. And Hikaru, do you want to give it a different move, or you want to just let it go?
I'll let it go. I'll play queen to G3.
Okay, fair enough. Queen G3. And ChatGPT, putting pressure on my G7 pawn. Got that one right. I'll play bishop takes G2.
Okay, I'll go bishop to H6.
This is great. When I pre-type the move I think you're going to play, you choose something else, which is fantastic. You played bishop H6, attacking my rook. That's a little suspect. Aiming to weaken my king side, I'll say. Computer responds with G6. Great job, ChatGPT, making the game go longer.
Okay, I will play queen to C3.
Queen C3, okay. It says keeping up the pressure and eyeing my king side. Oh boy, here we go. Bishop takes F1 is ChatGPT's move.
Queen to G7, checkmate.
And you know what? Not only is Hikaru the winner, but ChatGPT almost got through a complete game without making an illegal move. Hikaru, you're welcome to turn back around.
Yeah.
All it did was pause by playing bishop G3, bishop F3 twice.
Right. Yeah, it was pretty good actually overall. It was quite good.
Now, do you think we will see the day where instead of entering a position in Stockfish, you'll ask ChatGPT the best move?
No, I don't think that's ever going to happen unless they create some sort of dedicated LM solely to chess. So I doubt it.
Do you use ChatGPT in your regular life?
Not really. No, I think I'm going to sound like a boomer here, but I think all this. I think we have brains for a reason, and not using our brains is a very poor choice. I do think there are a lot of practical applications. I think for a lot of people, for example, like my wife, where English is not her first language, I think it can be very beneficial. But overall, I'm pretty skeptical. I know there are possible applications relating to finance and things of that nature as well, which I've looked at a little bit. But overall, for everyday life, I mean, I don't use it, and I don't think I ever will.
And I think you've proven why in this miniature game, Grandmaster.
Sort of. I mean, it's just chess. I mean, let's not get carried away here.
Grandmaster Hikaru Nakamura, better than ChatGPT. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Hikaru Nakamura is a beast when it comes to speed chess, and he's a legendary beast when it comes to bullet. And that's the portion, that's the segment we're about to enter as we go into the 1+1 Aman. His superior clock handling today during the entire match, his ability to leverage every single second when it comes to bullet chess, and just the form, the confidence that he's shown. I have a feeling this is going to be brutal to watch.
Yeah, 11-4 is enough of a lead that even if you had 4 points and you were Hikaru Nakamura, even making this comeback would be quite difficult, just simply with the amount of time that we have left. But when you have Hikaru with a lead like this, I don't think it's going anywhere. I'm curious to see what Hikaru's form is like in the bullet, but from what we've seen, he's been sharp in the time scrambles. He's always had a lead on the clock, so it's not just about how quick he plays, but how much quicker he plays than his opponent.
And that's really interesting what you say. It was Hikaru trailing a match with this much of a deficit. We might still think it's a possibility simply because it goes into that Hikaru territory of bullet. But here you're playing the king of bullet and you're down so many points. I think for Liem, right now it's about salvaging as much of it as he can to maybe just enjoy the process of playing bullet. And if he can get those couple of wins in, well, it would be amazing to watch.
Yep. And we're back to the same openings, right? Usually you spend the match kind of preparing for the bullet. You want a comfortable opening that you can use. I wonder if we're going to see D5. That's the move I would play. I was going to say in a bullet game, and we're playing bullet. So I like D5 there.
D5 looked like a lot of fun for the players as well as fans and commentators, but this as well, Hikaru now finally does get the C5 move in. We've spoken about it as being the key move for black, but wrongly timed by Hikaru. That was a double question mark with the rook on D1. The knight pinned. Is Hikaru going to even win that pawn back?
Yeah, I'm really curious about moves like bishop f4. You can also just guard with bishop e3, rook c1, but we may even see a sacrifice idea with pawn to c6. This is looking really good. There's rook d7. Tanya, there's so many ways that this is winning for Le Quang.
And getting that first win in a bullet portion, again, it doesn't matter how far you go with it, but for Liem, it's so important to at least try to get as many points as possible. If Hikaru starts on his hot streak in bullet, there will be no stopping him. It would be pure destruction. And right now, again, c5 completely defended now. You're not winning that pawn in the near future, maybe not even in the faraway future.
Yeah, it looks like bishop h3 wins material here, but there is rook c7. I'm curious if Hikaru is going to
everything in
play that.
c6.
Yeah, the thing is, he might be just, it's bullet, right? You almost want to lose that rook for the bishop because there's a lot of counterplay around the king.
And I think he was pretty much forced to go into this line. Like you said, you're counting on that queen and bishop battery on the light squares. Again, Hikaru, he's playing for tricks. Will he do Hikaru things in this one as well?
Well, I think queen g6 is the only attempt to keep the pieces on the board. We might need to see the queens disappear, though. Yeah, this should be a win for Le Quang, which would be an emphatic way to start the bullet portion. But unfortunately, we just can't call it this early. Like, we're not allowed to, based on what Hikaru has done time and time again in this match.
Absolutely. We've seen those crazy turnarounds in those final few moments. Completely lost for Hikaru, but I think it also makes sense to keep playing for as long as you can, just simply because you want the clock, the match timer to run out as well, to allow the minimum amount of games remaining.
And f5, okay, so the pawns are starting to get going here on the king side. White might want to play a move like, I was going to say king c4, but knight b6 can't happen, so knight e5, and this knight is just going to go everywhere.
And the thing is, knights are super tricky, right? They're one move away from forking in so many of these positions. And look at that, Hikaru, he's fighting. He's not making this easy for Liem.
Not at all. The rook wants to slide over to g6 and into g2. That is really tough to meet. Are we going to see some kind of sacrifice for this knight on f3 out of panic? Yes, we are.
And he had to do it. It was almost like he had to give up the rook from, again, a human perspective in the position to keep his own king safe. And now we're back to a position where Liem is only one pawn up. He's only got one extra pawn on the board.
Yeah, and Hikaru might just play this position for a win. He might even just be turning it around as we speak. He's got the outside pass pawn, but yeah, he does this. He's been doing it the whole match. No surprise it's continuing in the bullet.
Yeah, this is insane. And now Liam's down to 10 seconds. Hikaru's completely neutralized the material. Look at the way his own king is blocking the c5 pawn. The h pawn will start pushing up the board. The bishop on d4 about to fall, and it does.
Yeah, just every single time. you can't even blink, or you'll miss the time that Hikaru turns this entire thing around. h8 is covered, so there's just absolutely nothing to be done. This should have been a win, and it's ended up as a, well, about to be loss.
That's it. He queens, gives the check. Liem resigns. Hikaru Nakamura does it again. This is insane. From a lost position to a draw position, and eventually a Hikaru win.
Yeah, at the very least, now that we're in the bullet, it feels a little bit more normal that that's happening. Because in the blitz, you're just under the impression that because there's more time on the clock, there's no way that it should be happening. In bullet, it genuinely is tough to navigate small advantages. So it makes sense.
And Hikaru immediately, with his vintage knight sacrifice, he's done it on the f4 square, this time with the white pieces on the f5 square. If that knight was taken, there was a checkmate with queen g3, queen g7. And of course, pawn takes pawn also in the air there. So could not have been picked up. And Hikaru with a massive advantage. That bishop on h6, unchallenged. The pawn on d6 falling. I don't see Liem coming back in this one.
Yeah, you need to free the bishop here. Yeah, if you don't play h4, I don't know how the bishop escapes. And this looks like a great position for Hikaru once again. Really solid pawn structure. He can double the rooks. He can play a4, a5, bring the knight. Looks great.
He's setting up the f4 break. He goes for it. And Liem trying to get his own rook active. Bishop f2 would give up the knight on c3, so he has to fall back to d2.
Yeah, and bishop e1 is an idea now too. Might just be played here, although he starts with the pawn because of the f6 pawn loose. There is bishop f4 as an idea. A lot of potential tactics here, Tanya.
Everything hanging with bishop f4. The knight on c3, you could pick up the knight on d7, the rook on e5 hanging. And Hikaru instead goes for the safer option. Bishop to e1. This is the other thing he does, right? In Bullet, he doesn't want to spend that much time on calculation. He might go for it just for fun.
Right. Yeah, I could definitely see that. You can also repeat a couple more times. No, he goes with rook d3. I think he found one of the better continuations there because the reality was bishop f4 and bishop e1 were just not leading anywhere.
Which means that he's still playing for a win in this position, even though he doesn't need to. He can very well just repeat and keep that big advantage, but this is Bullet. Hikaru wants to win every game. e5, rook takes pawn, a big threat.
Yeah, and there was no pawn takes with check because the king would drop to g1. And so, honestly, a really well-played line by Le Quang, who, in that moment, I think outcalculated Hikaru.
Yeah, amazing. But again, Hikaru just puts the reset. He doesn't let it affect him. He's bringing on the moves fast and quick. Well, you can't take the c2 pawn because the rook is defended. Bishop takes pawn, runs into knight f4, picking up the rook.
Yeah, we see this exchange anyway. It's opposite bishops. Very good drawing chances for Hikaru. And knight f3 does look like a good one because if you get rid of the bishop on h4, that king is going to beeline for the pawns on the other side.
This is actually completely winning for Liem, and Hikaru does give up. He resigns. Liem gets the first Bullet win in.
Yeah, that had to happen for Le Quang's confidence here. It's 12-5. The margin is the same as when we got here, but beating Hikaru in Bullet, period. I mean, I'm looking at the score lines in each category, right? In each segment, and with a win there, he's already almost got as many points as the entire 3-minute section.
It's amazing. I mean, 4.5 to 2.5 in the 5+1 for Hikaru, 6.5 to 1.5 in the 3+1. And Liem does get the first win in, and there are still a lot of games to be played. But for Hikaru, once again, this is, I think, the format he enjoys the most, an absolute beast in it. The position that we have, level so far, but a lot of tactics with the d4 pawn pinned.
Yeah, the d pawn is loose. You almost start to think about taking, like just because it's Bullet, and maybe sacking the queen in a good way, but Le Quang, I think he's familiar with this. He knows exactly what's going on. It's opposite bishops once again. Obviously, from a match strategy perspective of making a comeback here, I will say all these opposite bishop positions are not great, but I don't think we're thinking about that from his perspective.
Exactly, and he moves the queen, he attacks the a6 pawn. I'm still liking Liem's position in this one, though. Hikaru infiltrating with his own queen, which can simply be driven away. Liem now up a pawn.
Yeah, moving that pawn up the board, although it's not entirely clear what's being threatened. b4, wonder, are you just going to support with a3 just temporarily? And otherwise, queen e5 looks like the square I'd want to go to.
Hikaru's taken 7 seconds for the game so far.
It's incredible, yeah.
Trades and denied there. The queen on f3 for Hikaru. It's absolutely essential to keep the queens on the board to try to create some tricks. On the position-wise, I think it's completely busted. White's the one who's coming for black's king here.
Yeah, you can try to play something like queen f6 here. It also hits the pawn and gets ready for potential sacks. This one, I think, is just going to be a draw. I don't think this is a blunder because he's losing here. I think it's a blunder because he had a good position and it's only a draw.
None of Hikaru's pieces can block the check, so there are perpetuals on the board. Unfortunately for Liem, the rook cannot join the party because of queen takes pawn. So this is the best way to go about it. I think it was the clock that made him take this decision.
Yep, that's a good point. And that's to Hikaru's credit, just playing so fast. Your opponent can have a good position, but they're going to go for draws. And oh, okay, that looks like maybe a mouse slip of sorts. He's turning it into f3, king f2, but that could have been just knight f3 mouse slip. Who knows?
the way he handled it after that almost doesn't feel like a mouse slip. It was like, yeah, of course I know this line. I've studied it. I mean, he just like bulleted every single move after that. And Hikaru, he's also known to play out these meme openings when he's got this big advantage, you know, playing to the galleries. But this, a more sane position out of it.
A little bit, yeah. It's turned into something that I think is just fine. I am wondering about leaving that king out. And yeah, finally, king back to G1. It's as if nothing, you know, if you joined just now, welcome to the show. Hikaru's playing a totally normal position.
Well, he's got his king to safety, castling it on that right flank as well. Rooks on E1 and D1. Everything looks great, except it's not because of the amount of time that he's actually wasted getting this normal position.
Yeah, Hikaru's actually gained time. We started at a minute. I actually wonder now if it's in his mind just ever so slightly that he wants to finish the game at 1 minute, because it's something that he might be starting to think about as his lead increases.
Do you think that's part of some dare that his chat and his community has given to him, that you have to finish one bullet game with more time than what you started with, Hikaru?
Well, I wouldn't put it past them. We already saw 100 subs change hands for an endgame earlier, so anything's possible.
Anything's possible, but it's been very impressive the way Liem's got so many good positions in the entirety of this match, but also in this bullet portion right now. With the black pieces, look at that knight at the center of the board, and you do the math as well. Even though it's level material, black spawns look a lot more menacing.
Yeah, and the knight's just jumping into some beautiful squares. Knight d3 and, ooh, rook d6. That's unexpected.
Queen f5.
Yeah, a shot there. I mean, you don't have to take it, so queen f7 exists, but just rook d6 took off probably 10 seconds there.
Yeah, because you're just taken aback. Wait, this move was even possible, and finally Liem's knight does find itself in it. And rook c2 could be a threat, so watch out. Rook c2 would have, if you take that rook, knight e1, forking ideas.
Yeah, speaking of forks, there's one on g4. But there is queen g3 in response. And no, he doesn't even want to take the pawn because it would maybe trade the queens by force.
He's keeping his attack going, but that b7 monster right there. Things are turning around, but queen e2 check.
That's an amazing move. And that is going to hurt. If the queen gets down there, queen to f2, there's going to be knight h4. I wonder what you do here. Like, is it possible to queen to maybe distract the pieces? I don't know how you prevent this. Queen f2, perhaps?
Queen f2, knight h4, like you said.
Yeah, I guess
and then
queen
takes
f2.
knight in the end of it.
Exactly. Yeah. That does work. So queen f2, we're going to see knight h4 now. There's two queens on the board. This is madness.
One of them taken away with a completely winning position. Hikaru, desperate, but the checks will not be good enough. He's down a rook, but he continues, but it's Liem who gives a checkmate.
Look at that. And you can see the wry smile there by Hikaru. He's back to this opening. We've seen it before. Bishop d7, queen c8. Now that it's bullet, Lekwang did not play h3. I'm curious to see if this works the way it always seems to work when I see Hikaru play this in bullet. h5, h4, and it just feels like checkmate is imminent.
You know, Liem is really putting on a show here. He's putting on the fight when it comes to bullet. And it reminds me of what happened in the Alireza and the Magnus match, right? Aman, where Alireza, so far out in his lead, takes his foot off the pedal, off the gas there. And then we see a complete turnaround in the bullet portion, but not good enough. Same thing when Magnus versus Jose Martinez there. And I wonder if that's the chance that Liem is getting to get these points in.
Yeah, I'm wondering about rook takes on h3 there. Don't know if it actually was the best move, but it's the type of move that I feel like you want to play. I mean, Hikaru is going to castle long. We know that is going to happen at some point. And the engine is screaming for this rook h5 move. Hikaru has different ideas. He wants to target h3.
And he comes back with the knight, hitting that bishop. h3 was hanging, so could not have been picked up.
Yeah, this is all Lekwang. He's got a very good position here. You don't want to play bishop f2 because of knight f4 in the position, but if black plays f4, then you're happy to drop back.
I mean, Liem is playing brilliantly in this bullet portion. Look at the position that he's amassed with the white pieces, right? You have extra material, but also you're the one who's on the attack here. Black's queen, Hikaru's queen, too far gone to join the party on the king side. I don't even know if it's ever coming back into the game.
Yeah, this is a typical idea. I'm wondering if the knight's even going to be allowed to go there. Knight e6 and bishop e3 all corral this knight, so it just can't join the action. If this queen doesn't get involved with queen takes a2, then I don't really know what's I don't know what it's going to do.
Knight on e6, a beautiful attacker and a defender. Some trades, he defends that a2 pawn. Liem does.
Yeah,
Knight
this
f4
queen
was a
just
big
can't
threat.
move, right? The queen on a6 is not part of the action here. Pay attention to the time as Le Quang navigates this position. He does drop the pawn, but the rook is hanging.
And you can't take queen takes pawn with a check because rook b2 would win material.
Bishop d4, watch for rook takes knight, and knight f4. It's always lurking in the position. Queen takes g6. And that was just a resignation, I think. It happened so fast. I was wondering what just happened there. But I think he resigned.
Yeah, because rook f8 just loses in that last position. Rook f8 and you either lose big material, or with knight d8, or with rook d8 you get checkmated. And Hikaru played that last move, rook e7, and he just resigned.
It always catches you off guard when, you know, your opponent makes a move and then the game ends. Because you almost think, what, did I resign? What just happened there? But no, Hikaru did not like his last move and said, okay, don't need to see any more of that. Let's mention the fact that Le Quang Liem has impressed in this bullet portion, so much so that the lead is, I will say, only 12.5 to 7.5. I think it's a great showing for Le Quang. I don't know if it's going to be enough for the comeback, but for the moment, he's actually put together some wins in the bullet, 2 in a row for Le Quang, and actually of the last 4 games, 3 wins and a draw for Le Quang.
It's been an amazing performance in the bullet by him. And I think now Hikaru realizes it. He can't underestimate Liem, despite what has happened in the match so far. He can't just be taking irrational risks like he's been doing. And, you know, he's got to still be a little careful. I don't know if there's enough time to make a full comeback, but things are getting closer, man.
Yep, agreed. What was maybe a time to play f3, king f2 is now suddenly not the time at all. Le Quang is really showing up here in these complications. Takes, maybe rook takes, and there's a big attack coming. Hikaru has to genuinely be careful.
He's about to lose that bishop, but he does give it up, but there's still a lot of attacking possibilities and some crazy tactics there missed by Hikaru. Bishop b6, he loses the queen.
That's a really nice tactic, and you know he set it up, and he's actually going to resign right away. So not really running the clock down as you might expect from Hikaru with that lead. It's now a 4-point deficit. We have to have the conversation that is being had for us on the board here, Tanya. This is a legitimate comeback attempt with 6 minutes on the match clock. You got to be careful.
It's huge. It's massive. And the fact that Hikaru has gone to use his favorite King's Indian defense just shows that how much he wants to get that win in. I'm sure in Hikaru's head, this is not a bullet reality he ever imagined. You know, It was like, this is where the match finishes. This is how I destroy it. And it's been a complete turnaround of the story. The position we have, Liem is winning again.
Yep, knight to c4 I'm expecting. It puts a lot of pressure on the position. Rook takes c8 is well timed. You can't take with the queen because of the knight. The knight's coming to a5. The rook's coming to c1. The bishop will drop back to f1. Another amazing position here for Le Quang.
Everything dominating. And what is that bishop on b7 even doing? That's a horrible piece right there. And for white, just playing a move like a3, it's hard for Hikaru to even find a move. He loses a pawn. He loses another pawn. 2 connected passes.
Yeah, he's hunting for counterplay as he should with bishop g5, but the reality is that's 2 connected pass pawns. a5 is happening, bishop f1 is happening. This is all Le Quang in this game as well.
And look at that knight on c8, dominated, has no squares to come to. Queen goes back to e1, tying down the black queen on c7. He can just drop back with his bishop at the right moment. He first attacks the queen. And does he just push b5?
Yeah, I think that Hikaru's knight needs to join the game, and actually he's securing some counterplay because he's saying, well, you can't play rook c6, so now maybe my queen and rook can get involved, but ultimately, you still feel like you just push all these pawns, right?
And Hikaru's that with a shake of his head. He knows that this has gone terribly wrong. Rook a1 coming in, but the bishop on f1 does a beautiful job of defending everything. Offers a queen trade. You trade, and that's resignation. You've got to keep the queens on the board.
Yeah, rook a2. There is queen d3. Hunting down that knight. And I mean, if you go and play defense, the pawns all go. The d pawn, the a pawn. This is, again, over. And we're bringing this back. There's 4 minutes left. We have to have a different conversation here, Tanya.
This is insane. It's going to be 9.5 to 12.5, just a 3-point deficit. Hikaru Nakamura cannot believe it. I cannot believe it. Aman, Liem wins.
There is something going on here which is a little bit strange. Now, obviously, Hikaru losing 4 games in bullet in a row and 5.5 out of 6, that's strange. But what I'm talking about is Hikaru he's known for his clock management, the game clock, the match clock. I'm surprised he's not running down more time. He's just resigning and going to the next game.
Yeah, at some point he has to take stock of that. And we've seen him sort of bleed the match clock so many times when things stop going his way. And he's not employing that strategy.
Yeah, he does have a good position here. Yeah, he is definitely on tilt a little bit. I mean, who wouldn't be? Hikaru just doesn't genuinely lose 4 games in a row to pretty much anybody ever. So it's quite rare. But he's maybe a little bit reassured by the fact that there's a minute on the clock for basically both players here. That's 2 minutes. There's about 3 minutes on the match clock. As long as he didn't lose a quick one here, like we have seen in the last couple games, I think he was maybe doing the mental math, Tanya, that he's going to make it out of this.
And you know what? This position, I don't see Hikaru losing. It's beautiful for white. You've got control of the C line at any point with queen c1. You're the one who controls the only open file. You've got that extra h pawn on the board. The knight on f3 tying down the black queen. Queen c6 coming in next.
Yeah, beautiful. And you can take the knight if you want, and then everything is defended. The king is also safe on g2. Difficult, yeah.
Hikaru about to win a bullet game after a while is a sentence I never thought I'd utter, but it looks like, watch out, king g4, king h3 ideas. Maybe going the Nigel shot way, but it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, there is queen c8 in that position. And I think Hikaru, like, mathematically was, okay, we see the castling attempt thwarted by the mouse slip, king f8. But I was going to say, I don't think he was worried about losing the match, just he comforted himself by knowing, look, there's actually no way for the comeback to happen. But just for the mental, getting back with a win there is quite a big deal for Hikaru.
Yeah, just feeling very safe with the scoreline that Hikaru had. He knows that there was no time. So I think he wants to try to win it on the board, on the games, get those bullet games in, get those wins in. And right now, I have to say, this one also looks like it's about to go Liam's way. Look at all the pieces. Look at Hikaru's king. Look at Hikaru's queen on the other side of the board. Meanwhile, Liem with a beautiful position.
Yeah, it's definitely the castling has really hurt Hikaru here. The rook is forced to stay on the H file, so a big advantage opening up for Liem. It is very likely going to be the final game of the matchup here, which means Hikaru is definitely going to win. But honestly, Tanya, the margin of victory, let's imagine that Liem wins. It's only going to be 3 points. That's as much as the match that we just saw yesterday. That's as much as some of the previous matches, like the Danlaz and Arjun one. It's really a difference between a very close match, closely matched opponents.
Absolutely. I mean, this comeback in the bullet has been awesome to watch by Liem. Our prediction model gave a total score of 4.5 in the entire 3 segments for Liem to score. He's exceeded those expectations, and how, as he gets another win in. That's more than twice the amount of score expected from him.
I mean, is that a little tongue-in-cheek there? Because resigning that position, you could just resign 10 seconds later, right? He wanted to play one more game. He said, I'm here for the fans. Let's get one more game in. Why end things just on that?
I think Hikaru is just incredibly competitive like that. He knows he can't lose the match. This is the absolute last game, which will finish. He wants to finish the bullet segment with a Hikaru win. That's what he wants.
It's weird because the way he's been playing and all these losses he's taken, it's as if he knows he can't lose the match. So I would assume he's interested in it ending, right away. But then he resigns with like 5 seconds on the total match clock, and clearly it looks like he wants to keep playing.
He does. It's like it's that what happens to a chess player when you're on tilt, you feel you want to play more and more. You need to get that win in. And I think it's very important for Hikaru to get that win in to be able to sleep tonight.
Yeah, so we have now what will actually be the last game, no matter what. Does look again like Likwang is doing quite well here, and maybe this backfired because if you're trying to end on a win and you don't yet again, it's like what are they going to do? Keep playing? Log on to Chess.com and continue the match after this is done?
I won't be surprised if we see Hikaru and Chess.com all night. By the way, the score in the bullet so far is 2.5 to 6.5. 6.5 for Liem, for Likwang Liem, against Hikaru's 2.5. That's insane.
I'd like to know from the production team what Hikaru's worst bullet score ever is, because I think we're looking at it, if I had to guess, in the entire decade of Speed Chess Championships that he's participated in. I'm sure he's had a position where he's been completely winning a match and maybe not cared too much about the results, but at the end of the day, he still doesn't put up a score like this.
And this is going to go up to 7.5. Look at the position that we've got here. Liem with a B3 monster, as we've been calling it during the SCC right there. 2 steps away. Completely busted for Hikaru. Thank God for him that the match clock is completely out of time here.
Yep, and this resignation will mean there is no more games. 13.5 to 11.5 will be your final score. And I have to say, it's kind of a really strange phenomenon that Likwang Liem absolutely dominated the bullet portion. It's shocking. I really don't know what to say. I have to be impressed and really give credit for probably the best bullet portion against Hikaru we've seen in the event. But yet at the same time, Tanya, the match itself was not close.
I think ever. I've never seen Hikaru lose so many bullet games in a row as we did tonight against Likwang Liem. I mean, this scorecard tells the full story, right? With the first 3 segments, 11 to 4, that was the score going into bullet.
Yep.
If I'm doing my math correctly. 11 to 4. And then the match ends with 13.5 to 11.5. With just a 2-point margin victory. And what makes it all the more astounding is that it happens in Hikaru's territory. He's the king of the clock. And there it was, Likwang Liem, just getting win after win in the bullet. And also, let's not forget, Aman, even in the 5+1 and 3+1, the amount of good positions that Liem had.
Yep. No, it got to give credit there. I never thought I would announce that a match with a 2-point deficit as the final score was actually not a close match at all. Such a strange finish to this one. Hikaru was in total control, pure domination, and then the bullet portion happened, and it was everything that we said it wouldn't be. It was Likwang dominating 7.5 to 2.5, and we actually saw in some of the other matches in the SCC, Tanya, great bullet portions from the underdogs, but I just think you can have a great bullet portion against Hikaru, and I still expect you to lose.
I'm still getting my head around it. When we got into the bullet portion, Aman, I was a bit terrified for what we were about to see. I just thought this will be a Hikaru destruction on the board with everything that's just happened on the match. Like you said, not close at all. Did not feel like a fight if you see the scoreline. And the way Hikaru took advantage of the clock in every single segment. And then just a complete fight, a complete turnaround there by Likwang Liem. Just amazing to watch, but just a bit too little, too late right there. And with that, Aman, we have our first quarterfinals that's been set up with this win by Hikaru Nakamura, who goes into our bracket. If we just bring that up one more time as the empty slots are getting filled slowly but surely, it's going to be Hikaru Nakamura taking on Wesley So in the quarterfinals. What do you make of that All-American clash?
Yeah, we can say a lot of good things about Likwang's bullet portion, but at the end of the day, scoreboard, right? That's what matters here. Hikaru is moving on. He wins the matchup. That's all he needed to do. And ultimately, the score over Liem doesn't truly matter at the end of the day. He's up against Wesley in the next match. That's an opponent that he's played a lot. We were speaking to Wesley after his matchup, and I don't think Wesley expected to face off against Hikaru this early in the event. That has been a marquee grand final in years past. So to match up in the quarterfinals means only one of these players is going through. And Tanya, historically, it has been Hikaru Nakamura.
Yeah, Wesley struggled against Hikaru. I think it's something about Hikaru's style of play. It's just difficult. He's a difficult opponent to face. And it's very interesting. I think during one of Hikaru's streams, Aman, there was this chat and this conversation about Hikaru having the feeling, or maybe it was chat having the feeling that perhaps Hikaru's on the easier side of the bracket. What's your take on that?
Well, I'd love to bring up the bracket again as we make that final conclusion. But having a look at it, I think it's fair to make some calls here. Ali Reza, obviously, on the right side of the bracket, is going to be the dangerous opponent, right? But you're probably looking at Nepo and Giri as a matchup that honestly is the winner of that going to take on Ali Reza. That is really hard to imagine. In terms of the better side of the bracket, I would probably have to agree that Hikaru's on the tougher side. So, no, I don't think he's at the easy side. Magnus is on the other side. That's always tough, but come on. Ali Reza, you've got Nepo, Wesley himself, and let's not forget, Lekwang was even a tough opponent here.
It was crazy, but I think there's something to that. And I think the conversation was around the road to the semifinals, to London, to get there. I mean, if you look at the left side there, you've got the world number 1, you've got the world number 3, you've got the world number 4, all stacked up right there. So perhaps an interesting note to make there. And it's all about getting to London for those semifinals to make it. And not just that, right? The top 3 in this year's SCC get a ticket to Riyadh for the Esports World Cup.
Yeah, and I mean, what I've been saying is that honestly, if Magnus makes it to the finals, then because Magnus doesn't get a spot, he's already qualified to the EWC. It means that for these players in the SCC, you make it to London, you make it to the Esports World Cup.
Yeah, and I think it's a safe bet to say that Magnus Carlsen will make it to London. I think if you had to bet your house on anything, I think that would be, but don't quote me on that one. But yeah, so it's all eyes on London, but still a long, long way to go with that, Aman. These are our Champions Chess Tour leaderboard standings there. The top 6 will qualify for Riyadh, and Magnus is already in as the defending champion for Team Liquid. He's already booked his ticket right there. A lot of chess still left to be played in the SCC on that road to London. We only have our first quarterfinal set up with Hikaru and Wesley. A lot more action coming on, but we do have a little break from SCC for the next 10 days. Aman, we've seen a set of matches. You've commentated on each one of them. What have been your big takeaways as we set up our next big one, which is happening on October 27th? Hans Niemann takes on the former world champion, Ding Liren.
Yeah, that's right. October 27th, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Central European Standard Time. Mark your calendars because, it's far enough in the future that you might start to lose the SCC buzz, but we'll be right back. And that match is going to be quickly followed by many, many more. You mentioned we have one quarterfinal matchup, but there are many more that still need to be made, right? Hans against Ding is a huge matchup. I think a lot of people will be looking forward to that one. You mentioned Hans Niemann, the guy with future world champion aspirations, playing against the former world champion. So a lot of hype behind this matchup as ultimately Hans is trying to punch his ticket to that finals and get the matchups that he's looking for against those top players in the event.
Yeah, this one's going to be awesome, including what's following after that. But we do have a couple of days off from SCC, but in 10 days, do join us. Aman, going to ask you a quick question. Which player has impressed you the most so far in the SCC?
Well, honestly, this player is someone I expected to impress me. So for me personally, it's not a surprise, but definitely the person who's impressed me is Denis Lazovic. That matchup was one that was really a 50-50, a tough call. In fact, a lot of players and fans would probably say, hang on, Arjun's the favorite. But Denlaz favored by the prediction model, and ultimately he came in, he showed just a well-rounded match, I didn't see a lot of weaknesses that were easy to exploit. He's used to the online format. He's still a young player, improving rapidly. He has his systems that he knows inside and out. I think that Denis Lazovic is a real force. And remember, I think it's in the bracket, Hans and Ding. The winner of that goes on to face Denis Lazovic. That is an absolutely crazy matchup in the quarterfinals, because I think Denlaz gives either of those players a huge run for their money.
With everything you said, I think 10 days is far too long for the next one, Iman. And if it's SCC, we can expect a lot more upsets and turnarounds and speed drama. It's going to be awesome. Iman, this was so much fun doing it with you. Thank you so much, chat, for watching and for joining us through this crazy ride that was Hikaru Nakamura versus Liem. It's a sign off from us. Happy Diwali. We will see you on the 27th of October.